Here we go. I think it's live. Can you guys see me? Okay. You can. Can you hear me okay? I'm actually doing it professionally. Hey, everybody. Peace, peace, peace. Peace, the east, west, north, and the south. This is FleurBrun coming to you today. I am, hold on. Make sure the chat is chatting. Okay. Perfect. Okay. I think you can hear me. I think so. Perfect. Perfect. It just takes me a little bit, y'all. I actually merged my Zoom with the YouTube. You know, technology does work for some reason. So check on in. Hey, everybody. Oh, so much to discuss. I'm excited to have a new discussion. It's actually not new. You know, if you've been with me for a while, you already know this is a discussion we've had forever. Let me turn this off so I can talk to you because I'm kind of looking through my live stream. There we go. I can kind of focus a little bit more because if I'm looking at your comments, it's hard for me to do it side by side. Hold on. Let me just check. Okay. Maybe I should do it this way too, because I have a little bit of a delay. It's like 20 seconds. Okay. All right. I think I can do it this way. I'll just not be distracted because then I can see your comments. Okay. So, hey, everybody, you know, we're going to discuss the timeline merge. As many of you know, shouldn't I wait until we get to 500? So let me see. This chat doesn't really let me see. I don't see. Okay. I can't really see how many's in here. Can someone do a count so we can start at 500? I don't know that I can't see it on here. Okay, thank you. You know, when I'm trying to be technologically advanced and it's just going really, really slow. I'm getting there, y'all. I will thank you. Thank you, everybody. So we're going to talk about this timeline merging that's occurring right now. We'll kind of wait. How's everybody doing? How's the weather? Is everyone warming up some? Are you guys getting warmer? Or is it still kind of chilly where you are? The 144? Yeah, I think everybody was kind of bugged out when I talked about the 44, the 44, the 44. And I give some credence because do you remember when, I'm sorry, Jay-Z made the video, was it the album 44? Was it the album 44? I think he made an album called 44, right? And then, you know, his daughter is called Blue Ivy. And you know, the Roman numeral I before a V is 4, right? Um, and blue represents the 4. So, you know, a lot of I don't want to call him a celebrity, he's more an occultist. And I personally think he's either part of the timeline, meaning he's part of the simulation, or he's a time jumper. Either way, he's been privy to certain information. Occult information is why he uses it. 44 megahertz. Yeah, so just forbidden, think about the way that the 4 is used a lot. And 4 is a regulator number. It kind of boxes everything in, puts you in 4 corners. It kind of puts things in a box a little bit. So we won't discuss that today because we're going to talk about the timelines. And can you guys just tell me when we're at we're at 4, we were at the 444. Okay. 4 elements. Yeah. The 4 is very relative. So, if you want to watch that, family reunion, it would behoove you to watch the family reunion video that Jay-Z did. And I don't care what you think of him, because he's not my favorite kind of human being, but it's relative to the occult standing of the 4. Okay, so let's get into the topic. We'll start a little early. Let's talk about the timeline merging. Now, many of you have to realize, and I think I discussed this before, that I'm kind of can repeat it because that was the video I think that was taken down. Was that the video I was talking about Brother Rich? I think so. I think that was a video, if I'm not mistaken. Was that the video? You guys can kind of remind me. I think that was a video I talked about having jumped into an alternative timeline. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, Brother Rich, he now calls himself Radiohead, which I think is kind of cool. That's very reminiscent of the 90s, like Radiohead. And then also he's on Black Magic, which many of you see. I've been on his channel quite a few times. Wonderful, chilled out gentleman. Also is a new father. So I'm always a fan of daddies, especially to little girls, because I'm a daddy's girl. So you know how I'm so soft for just daddies and daddies who have little girls, especially new ones. So congratulations again to Radiohead, Brother Rich. Congratulations on bringing forth a new, beautiful, new soul into this realm. Okay. So when we talk about that, I think I'm going to bring up what I discussed before in that video. I think the one that was removed. But if some of you were here, some of you probably missed the video, I'm not sure. But I remember, again, I was moving, I was having, especially, I think many of you know me, and over the years, I discussed part of some of my abilities, or what you consider to be heightened awareness, comes about when I'm really stressed or when I don't feel well. It's probably just it's being invocated because of maybe the way that my adrenals work, maybe it's how I'm set up, whatever, what have you. It's been over the years, like whenever I get really, really what you perceive as to be hyper intuitive, hyper psychic, or I jump into other realms, it's always when I'm like in a stage of like flight and fight, or like not feeling well in another, like an alternative emotional state. It's always the case. But nonetheless, I had jumped into another timeline where I had encountered Brother Rich, and I'll talk about this a little bit because I'll pull back from it. And I was going to the home where it was a home setup, and he had a multitude of women that were perceivably his wives, or it was like a concubine, but they were all attached to him. And he was procuring me for one of the wives, and he just felt like I would have been a good fit because of the way that I'm very, I don't want to say detached, but I emotionally, I don't have really that kind of mindset to be really fussy. Like I'm not, I'm a girl's girl. So I love being around women. I'm not a lesbian, because many of you call me that. I love men. I love healthy, strong, caramel, beautiful Indigenous men. Many of you know this. I make zero excuses for that. But I was being procured to kind of like, he was seeing how the dynamics of the girls met me, how they would feel. Now, mind you, I'm not judging it from the position of who I am now. I'm talking about like when I was in this alternate timeline. And I'm going to kind of merge these things together. I'm just going to give you this story because it'll kind of give you an idea of what's going on. And it could relate to a lot of the things happening with many of you. So I went to the home. He had a home, and it was like a big bed, like a round bed. It's very giving, what is that house? The Playboy Mansion kind of feel. He had a studio next to the room that some of the girls were staying in. And I like, again, this was a few weeks ago, if many of you know about. So again, I was there. There was two girls. There was a main girl who kind of looked like Cardi B, and she was a little upset because he was going out on a date with another girl, which she really, really liked. And I talked about her being the girl that he had on his show. What's her name? Lion, what's her name? Everyone, can you remember? Something Lyons, the young lady that he actually interviewed on his channel. And it was interesting because when I went through this timeline merging or jumping, it was a day that he actually interviewed her. Erin, thank you. Thank you, Erin Lyons. So the main girl, who's his main woman, who's probably the head of that particular harem, she was really upset because everyone in the house understood that that was someone he really, really liked, and it was known. So when I walked in, I kind of just settled the one that looked like Cardi B, and just said, listen, he enjoys you, he likes you, she's not gonna replace you, you still hold the place. I was just kind of giving that peace of mind. Now, mind you, y'all, let's go to who I am today. I am non-supporter of polygamy. I am a non-participator in polygamy. Because someone's going to say, oh, FleurBrun is saying she wants to be in a harem with Rich and she's talking about being with other chicks. No, I'm just talking about jumping into a timeline, an alternate timeline where I coexisted with Rich in a different dynamics. And I'm bringing this to you so that I can build what's going on now and how many it may interrelate to many of you. Now in this particular timeline, as we merge, we're having a convergence of the multiverse, which has all aspects of you. Okay. So in that realm also, again, I don't even think I had a romantic relationship with Rich then. It was just kind of like, I don't know if he was procuring me because he thought I would be good for the girls. It was kind of like maybe it was a business decision because I didn't have any affinity. Like we didn't have any, like even in that realm, we didn't have like anything going on. It was more of like to place me there to kind of be like the head mistress, maybe. You know what I mean? The head mistress of the concubine. Kind of cool though, because I never think about, I'm not really square now, but I'm not really into that stuff. So it's kind of interesting that in another alternative timeline, I'm in a timeline where I exist, where that's a plausibility. And it's the opposite. We always talk about equal opposites, right? That's why I'm talking about the convergence of who I am in this particular timeline. I'm very sedentary. I'm very mama bear. I'm very like when I like a mate, I just want to be with him, just kind of like embodied in the intertwine between just one partner only. That realm, it just looks like I don't know. I wasn't a lesbian, but I don't know why he would have procured me. Anyway, so also in that realm, many of you know how I feel about Coach Carlson. I'm not a fan of him. He's not an enemy, but in that realm, I was cheering for him at some sort of coliseum. He was doing something like a speech or something. I don't know who I was to him, but I was in the back. And this is what makes me think that maybe I was attached to him and not so much Rich, because of the way I was cheering for Coach Carlson in the back. Like I was like, like pumping him up. Like I was in the back where he was on the stage somewhere and I was just like, yeah, go, do it, So it made me understand that I might have had some sort of attachment to Coach Carlson. Okay. So why I bring this up, because in that realm, where I coexist. There was a couple of things that went on, and I'm going to talk about. There were other experiences lately where I'm having replacements in this particular life where there's a convergence happening. So right now, why I bring that up is because I know that we're experiencing, and I've talked about this years ago. Some of you have been with me longer, some of you less, but I'll kind of just give you a little retro. I always spoke about a time where all the multiverse would start converging back into 0 point. And there's multiple versions of us in each of these realms. And usually what happens when people say they feel like they woke up in a different timeline is kind of because you've had an extreme event maybe that happened, or something that pulled you into another version of yourself and another reality where you coexist, and you kind of merge with one, and then you see little differentials. Usually it's not so big. And I talked about, even with the concept of the Mandela effect, I kind of talked about that most likely is an update in the simulation, because this is a simulated realm. Nothing here is real. We've injected ourselves, if we're real, into a simulation, and we're projecting with our energy, with our electrical mind, the energy from our mind, projecting the reality that we're coexisting with. But it is happening in multi-realms, like multiple realms where you coexist in variations of yourself, some more extreme than others. Now, There's so many examples of this in movies. One is, I forgot what it was called. It's with, she's called the Red, she's one of the X-Men. She's called the Red, what was she called? The Red something. Uh-oh. Did the stream go off? Hello? The stream, did it go off? Uh-oh. Okay, it's back. I saw a little hesitation. Okay. The Red Sonja, what was she called? Not Red Sonja, she was the Red something. And Red Phoenix, thank you. And she had saw a version of herself. In one realm, she was so powerful in the realm that all of us knew her in. She had all these abilities. She was like a mega X-woman. And in another realm, she actually perceived herself to be a mom, where she had two sons, and she was fixed onto this realm. She wanted to be in that realm because it was something that she never experienced. She wanted to pull herself. She saw her sons in those realms, and it really touched her heart, but in a very, it ended up being really negative, because in order to be in the realm where she was coexisting with her sons, she had to take over the aspect of herself in that realm, because she wasn't merging with it. She kind of just wanted to jump into it and totally take over the other by force. It wasn't a natural progression, a natural merging, which happens when you're matching close enough to another reality that you start to merge. And that's what I perceivably think sometimes when you're seeing these Mandela effects, and especially when they become more redundant and more progressive and more regular, it's because you're merging into other realities where you coexist. And in that merge, it's kind of like how a Sybil, you know, someone who has a multiple personality, and you perceivably think she's like schizoid, schizophrenic, because she hears voices. And we talked about a lot of people who are so-called experiencing what you perceive as schizophrenia is literally having a glitch and being too close to the realities that they coexist with, or being so infused and kind of embedded in other realms so that they can hear the other realities coexisting with them, and they respond to it. So it's just kind of like a glitch. Okay. So when we talk about having these mergings, it's, you know, when you go into a Mandela effect, sometimes Mandela effect is slight. It's like a variation of a color. Sometimes it's spelling of a word, like Bernstein Bears. I remember Bernstein. Some of you remember Bernstein. Some of you remember Sex. I remember Sex and the City. Some remember Sex and the City. It's variations. And remember, in the last YouTube video I made, the last one, I talked about waking up in a realm with lipless people. And I know many of you thought I was going mad, and I'm quite rational. I'm drug-free, alcohol-free. I'm on 0 psychotropics. I have a very regular, casual, very sober life, if you call that boring. Okay. I wish it was a little more exciting, but some days it is. But you know, basically I'm rational. And when I told you I jumped into another realm, it meant that because I moved out of my previous location, and I think all the stresses, like I said, when I jumped into the other realm with Radiohead, and I experienced a realm where I coexisted with him in that way, it was a variation of me that would have been perceived to him as a Mandela effect. Like maybe when he saw me, he was like, wow, she's different. I remember her not wearing her hair that way. I remember she used to maybe wear her hair longer, like little variations, you know what I mean? And that he probably saw because I wasn't coming from his timeline. I had merged at that moment with a FleurBrun that coexisted there, and maybe he perceived little variations, little personality differences that the original FleurBrun that he knew doesn't have. So that being said, is that right now we're experiencing a mass convergence. We're returning to 0 point, and because we're returning to 0 point, there's a merging of all of the different timelines are converging into one. And it isn't now by matching, it's by default, because we're going to reset. The video game is ending. So because of that, we are starting to have experiences in dream and wake worlds depending on how you perceive a dream and wake, because it could be very different to many, where you're experiencing replacements of characters in your real time. Now, what I talk about, do I have monitors? Aren't there any, there's no moderations in here? Why? People are acting crazy. Hold on, let me check the chat, y'all. Are y'all behaving yourself? I don't want to have to remove. Are we adults? Is it because of Jesus? Did I offend you because of Jesus? If it's because of Jesus, please. Jesus, why? I don't know. Well, Damashe and Yafi are here. I don't know. I don't think anybody said anything crazy. They would have seen a emojis here too. Okay, so Jesus, I think I offended so many with the Jesus. Jesus. Big up to the Fuller Report. He's really hyper religious. I love his shares and his rants. Anyway, so we're talking about the convergence and the different character replacements that are happening. So what I wanted to make this video because I had character changes. Now, I talked about, and again, I hate to repeat to those who know me, but I have newer people that haven't been a party to my platform. And many of you know I've been on YouTube. I'm one of the OGs. I've been on YouTube since the beginning, about 12 or 13 years now. It might be 13 years, give or take a couple of years. No, a couple months, maybe like 12 years. Okay. So many of you know me from the beginning and some just met me. So I have to remind everyone of because unless you go back to the videos where I speak about it, it's kind of hard because I have to pull you in a little bit. But what happens is that in your life, and it happens in regular life, it happens now where you will have, let's say you have a boyfriend and his name is Jacques Cousteau, Jacques. Salut, mes frères. Jacques. Okay, his name is Jacques, right? And he's really a creep. He's really terrible. He's mistreated you. Jacques is like all over the place. He's really not the ideal boyfriend, and you guys break up. And it's heartbreaking. You really thought it was going to be long term. You kind of went through emotional turmoil. You kind of, reinvented yourself, had to heal from it, grow. And then all of a sudden, you go to like a board meeting. And you're just going to a casual board meeting, no big deal, every day at the job is normal. And, this new executive comes in. He's coming in from France. Now, mind you, the jock that you were with, though he had a French name, he was American. Maybe some French roots back in the days, maybe Canadian, maybe something from somewhere else, but he wasn't French. You walk into the boardroom and guess who's there? There's a new executive, and guess what his name is? Jacques. And this Jacques sees you from the get-up. He sees you from the door. He notices you from the very beginning, and he makes really good eye contact. He is actually everything that you wanted your ex to be. He's like commanding. He's very intellectual. He's very reserved, funny. The things that you would have wanted your proper mate to do. This man shows up with the same name, and he has a vibration of a male that's an upgraded version. Now, I talked about the rules and regulations of the simulation. The simulation has base characters. You have your protagonist, you have your basic, your villains, you have those who are like your guides. There's all these, but there's base characters, the default characters that you come in with. Usually you only have one love interest if you've written that into the programming before you were inserted inside of the simulation. Kind of like if you're on Star Trek and you go inside of, many of you, big up to the Trekkies. Any Trekkies in here? Put a big, do they have this, do they have the Spock thing in the emojis? Put a big Star Trek sign if you're a Star Trekkie. I don't know if you have it because some of the things have the emojis where they have like the Star Trek swishy thing. There he goes. So, when you go in the simulated, there's a simulated room, right? And, sometimes Captain Kirk, to kind of relieve himself from stress or just saving the world or traveling, he would go and punch in different data of the type of environment he wanted to engage with. Sometimes he liked the Wild Wild West, like a saloon. He would want to put certain characters. Now, why I bring this up is because if you understand we're in a simulation, a video game. For those video game Nazis in here, and enthusiast. I shouldn't call you Nazis, right? Video game enthusiasts in here. You do realize, like, when you go inside and you program, there's always default characters. And depending on the type of game you're interfacing with or whatever is allotted in the Wild Wild West, maybe there's a love interest and then a husband, and then you have a lover in this particular simulation. Then you might have an option of two. Then, or you may just have one love mate in this. Okay, so why do I bring this up? Because the default characters are always going to be there. So if you empty the space, the data, and you dump one data character, but it's a base character, you will get a resurgence of a character that matches the new level that you're on. You guys kind of get me? So let's say that Jock in this young lady's life, you know, she's has a boyfriend, he's not that, but she's changed levels in the simulation. She's now been upgraded because remember, she worked on herself, she did a lot of yoni cleaning, she didn't have sex with other men, she kind of cleared the space. So remember, she cleared that spot, but that's a default position for a mate, a partner. So now she cleared the seat. So now there's nobody there, but that is always going to be filled because when she entered into this simulation, that character will always be in that position. So now that she got rid of the Jock that she really didn't like, it wasn't great for her, now she's upgraded herself. Her character has new tools and new access to a higher Jock. Now a new Jock walks in and he is now the character that she always had. This is just an upgraded Jock at a higher level that she is now interfacing with. Do you guys kind of see that? So why I bring this out is because now as we are starting to go through the default ending of the simulation, the finale, that's why you're seeing all the craziness happening. We're going to see planes, trains, automobiles falling out the sky, detracting. You know, you're going to start to see the orange man go rogue. He's going against, you know, the he's going against the Elon Bioborg Muskie, who's pissing people off, trying to kick people out of their jobs, telling them to show him what they got. You know what I mean? You're going to start to see a lot of craziness, wars, rumors of wars. You're going to start to see Christians go against Jews, go against Muslims. Like, it's the best finale ever. Earthquakes, pole shift. I mean, everything that you want in a video game to make this joint as exciting and stressful as possible. But because we are now converging into the end, all the multiple versions of you playing in all these other games simultaneously. And I always give you an example of going to the movie 9. I love this little weirdo show. I kind of always tell you to watch it. I don't know if any of you watched it. It's a really good example of, I'm sorry. It's a really good example of, you know, the scientist who was this main character who was being chased and harassed by the government. And he basically did some mad scientist experiment and splintered himself into these 9 little aspects of himself, like dolls, like weird little rag dolls. And they're all interfacing as if they're individuals, but they're all part of the one, Neo, the one. Because if Neo really, if we knew what Neo really was, he was Trinity. He was Morpheus. That's why they all defaulted to him and always relied on him, because he was the one. He was what they all were splintered into because they all came from him, the one. So when you watch this movie, it's really, I mean, if you've got a kind of weird kind of, I think if you're coming here to even hear this conversation, y'all would be in alignment with this concept. But if you understand and understand that all the realities that we're coexisting with have to converge. So what's happening is you get character replacements right now where beings are coming in and replacing other beings. Now, I'm going to use an example. Big up to Rod Hayes, who was on Radiohead's on Black Magic 363. He was on his show last night with Radiohead, Brother Rich. I really enjoyed the conversation. Rod's mind is, he's like a super library, like a mega library, like he accesses, and that's very reminiscent of O negatives. Okay. Whenever I see an O negative, am I still on the stream? I don't see my stream. Uh-oh. Is it on, y'all? Uh-oh. Did my stream end? Maybe it's like delayed. Hold on, y'all. I don't know if it ended. Did the stream end? Hello? Okay, I'm gonna see. Oh. Hello? Hello? I can't tell if my stream is on, y'all. Hold on. You may see me, but I don't see you. So I don't know if the stream is on. So let me check. You may see me. I don't see your comments. So I have to go like on YouTube to see if I'm on there. To see if I'm on there. Okay, I am. Okay, I just don't see your comments, so I'm gonna kind of mute this. I know I see you. Okay, sorry, y'all. I couldn't tell if you were on. It stopped on my other feed, so I just think, so let me not look at that feed. I gotta pay attention because it's very distracting to look at another screen. Oh, thank you, Tamasha. Tamasha said they can see me. Okay, so thanks, Mom. So I was talking about Rod Hayes. So I watched, I think I only got, did I watch? I'm not sure how much I watched. I really enjoyed the build yesterday. And then, you know, I told you whenever Rod talks, like I get these telepathic like messages. And I'll kind of tell you how I know Rod. Now, I didn't think I told him, I'll probably tell him. Maybe I did tell him because sometimes I just talk and I don't know. But I think I talked about it with the Zombies is that I remember Rod. And Rod is a character in my simulation. And I remember the first time I came in the simulation, when I came off of the ship, he was one of the first people I met. And I remember him. And how it triggered me that I had a memory of him is when he smokes, because that's what he was doing. He was sitting on a log when I met him in the past or future, because it's closer to the future, right? Past future. When I first came off the ship, he was the first person. He was sitting in a forest and he was just smoking. Like it was like something different, look almost like a wood kind of not a device, but he was sitting there and he was just intrigued. He wasn't afraid of me. I was dressed in like a suit, like a spacesuit, but a tight like spandex kind of like what you perceive to be like a you know, like a suit that you travel off. And he was the first person I saw. And I remember speaking to him. And I had that flashback only when he smokes. And so it was like my memory, my database, my cellular memory is picked up when he smokes. So when he smoked, I was like, oh, I remember when I met him. And he looks very similar to someone I know who I'm really close to. And that character isn't in my default system anymore. So that's when Rod entered, is when that character was out completely. Rod entered into that position because now he's replaced, he's a higher version of that character. Just as mine, very similar though, on a base character that I had previously. So the base character I had previously that represent, I would use Rod as an example because you guys know him. The base character wasn't as smart, but he was feisty. He's got a lot of that same kind of like Brucka kind of energy. They look almost exactly alike, especially now. Similar age. Actually, they're born in the same year. This is what I'm talking about. The base characters, once one is out of that seat, you will always have that character return in another, whatever form or whatever hierarchy you are in the game. So it's interesting that Rod, the actual original character, the others were deviations of him, returns because he's the one I met when I got off the ship, the personality he is today. So it lets me know I'm close to going back on the ship. That also lets me know that the ship is coming. When I say ship, it's literally in this realm. It shows itself as a ship, but it's really a representation of us being able to access and wake up outside of the simulation in our cryo states. Okay. So yeah, that's why also he comes in as a sign, a monkey. And then many of you know my affinities for the ape man on, what do you call it? On Black Panther. And look who comes in the character. So I use that example because I want you to see in your life when someone comes in and he's a monkey, which is also friend to the rat in Chinese astrology, right? He's also a Scorpio who is very interconnected and very good as far as like battling partners for the Sagittarius. I have a lot of Scorpio on my chart as well. Okay. It's very intertwined. So it's interesting as I go back to the future where I first began, now I'm starting to meet the people, the original character default system, the higher versions, now as I start to go towards reset. And it's important for everyone to pay that, and he's not the only one who's been replaced. There are other beings who are now being placed. And when I say replaced, it's not that they're gone. They just get that character, those base characters are always going to be present in your game. Even in the dynamics of my Zoom, big up to the Zombies. The Zombies all see this all the time, especially the OG Zombies, because if any group I start always has characters who have the same energy. So it means that my Zoom or my groups will always have these characters who play a certain role. And when one leaves, another will replace it that matches the energy the same, whatever hierarchy or whatever vibratory frequency I'm at that time. So, but right now what's happening is that we're all experiencing quickening. So now I'm getting characters that are now coming in, the main characters that maybe the seats were shifting and turning out, turning in. Now the main characters are starting to come into play. The main default characters that might have been released, now they're coming back or they're starting to be replaced in real time. And if you notice the picture that I put in my thumbnail, we talk about twin flames for so long. I think this is an aspect of it. This probably was what twin flames really was, kind of like a dark and light character, replacing. And I showed if you looked in my thumbnail, everyone, take a look at it. Look at the two characters. Can anyone tell me, do you know why I placed Miss One next to the Wicked Witch of the East? Let's see if you guys notice why. Do, 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 do. Do 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 do. Let's see. Okay. You kind of got it a little bit, but that's not it. What happened is that the Wizard of Oz and Wiz are just duality, which many of you said, big up to everyone who said duality. It's a representation of two different timelines that are representing certain kind of aspects of the other. But when we bleed over to one more dominating to who we are in our frequency, in our vibratory frequency, we'll get a total domination of that new character that takes over the old one. So in The Wizard of Oz, some of our lunars don't know, and also big up to our family who's abroad, because a lot of our European family may not be aware of some of the movie choices, especially if they're lingually different than us. So like if they're living in South America, they may not know about the Wiz. They may only know about The Wizard of Oz. So there's two different versions of The Wizard of Oz. And if you don't know, just anyone who read the series, it's a bunch of books. The Wizard of Oz is not just one story, it's a series of books. There's so many different versions and different aspects of the stories, beginning and middle, different characters being prioritized and talked about. It's very good. And Wicked kind of speaks to this as well, because Wicked is showing you the aspect of the Wicked Witch of the West and what helped develop her into the being she is perceivably what we accept later in The Wizard of Oz, also in The Wiz, okay? But when you look into the aspect of when I showed Miss One and the Wicked Witch of the East, who was under the house and she had been tumbled on, and Dorothy unknowingly and non-purposefully ended up killing her with the house when her house moved from one dimension and she moved into another dimension, which is in the Wizard of Oz. Okay, so why I share that is because what it's showing is that in one aspect of the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the East was killed, and her shoes had to be taken to be able to allow Dorothy to navigate with some level of safety and security. And the other realm, when Dorothy came upon from Brooklyn, big up to Brooklyn in the house, because The Wiz is my favorite. I love The Wizard of Oz as a children, but because I'm a melanated woman, I really connected to the music. Michael Jackson was in there. What's her name? Uh, God, my gosh, it's terrible. How can I not know her name? Anyway, how can I not? I say her name all the time anyway. You know who she is. Diana Ross. Thank you, y'all. When Diana Ross came and she was in Brooklyn, she was in the house. I love that scene, like the family scene that's very tribal. You know, in Brooklyn, the family gets together during Thanksgiving. I don't know if it was Christmas and new babies are introduced to the family. Couples showed up. It's very reminiscent of how I grew up in New York. Big up to New Yorkers, especially those in Brooklyn. You know, my parents had, you know, when they first came to the States, they lived in Brooklyn and Harlem. So I, you know, like I love that whole theme. But in that movie, you know, that Dorothy had an afro, a short afro. She was representative of the tribal-based Melanite woman in that scene. And in the other scene, Dorothy was a Midwest girl, really cute, on a farm. Do you see the duality playing out, y'all? One is citified. And what's interesting is that in reality, that's, you know, that's how you know someone else is directing the scenery, because it doesn't make sense. In reality, the melanated person would probably be in the farm, and the non-melanated girl, she may be on a farm, but she would probably be more in a setting like, you know, a more citified setting, depending on that. But it's just interesting they put the melanite in the city and the lunar in the countryside. That wasn't purposeful because they weren't created at the same time, but, you know, probably just a byproduct of just creation later. But as you're perceiving one Dorothy from the Midwest, I love that Dorothy, even though she was abused and satanically ritualized, and just so much happens with her. It's dastardly. She literally was running away from home. They tried to take her dog. I mean, someone tried to steal her dog. The wicked neighbor, who was just vicious and nasty and bitter, took her dog. And then when her dog came back, she said, you know, now, you know, Auntie M said they're gonna probably have to take your dog, put him down, because she said the dog attacked her. So Dorothy packed her stuff, you know, she bounced, you know, she left because she was like, you ain't gonna take my dog. And she met a, you know, a gentleman who was like, later on we see him as a character, but he was kind of like a nomad. And he was her first introduction of seeing like into the future a little bit, because remember, he was like a bit of a fortune teller. And then when she realized that, you know, maybe she should go home because there was going to be a problem, she tried to go home, and that's where she was caught up in a huge, you know, tornado. And it basically not only just took her, but it took the house she was in, and she kind of, you know, jumped into another dimensional state of mind, and it popped her into the Wizard of Oz. Okay. Now with the Dorothy in Brooklyn, it's a little different. The duality shows up. Melanated Indigenous woman living in Brooklyn, having a beautiful home with all the family and everything. She felt kind of lost. You know, she didn't really feel her place in life. Toto jumps out the apartment out in a snowstorm, right? She goes out. I don't know how she did in heels though. I've done that and busted my behind every time. You know, the brownstones in Brooklyn, those steps, even though they got a little grip on it, if you got some heels, I don't know how Diana Ross did it, but it was magical. She ran out in a snowstorm, found Toto, and a super duper tornado just developed in Brooklyn, took her out of Brooklyn and brought her to the Wiz, okay? To Oz. Okay, so why I bring that up is because you're seeing duality play out. That's why I showed them a picture of Miss One, because the Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz went into the Oz. She ended up killing the Wicked Witch of the East. And when the other Dorothy showed up in Oz, she resurrected. Listen, it's important that you understand and overstand. She resurrected a witch that was petrified by the other witch, and she released her from the encryption, or the you know, her being embedded, and now she was free from this particular Dorothy showing up. So one was killed The lunar, when she showed up in Oz, the Wicked Witch of the East was killed. And then when the other Dorothy, the melanated indigenous Dorothy showed up in Oz, she pulled and resurrected Miss One. Okay. And if you're in numerology, you should watch that first scene when Miss One talk about, let me give you my sixes and nines. Like, I love her character. If no one's seen it, for our lunars who haven't seen The Wiz, you would really enjoy it. Just like I enjoyed The Wizard of Oz. It's just such a wonderful duality that it kind of makes you see full circle. So that's why I talk about the different merging, because now what's happening is that Miss One is becoming more prevalent in a world where I'm a melanite and I am resurrecting an aspect of something that was dormant and petrified. The petroglyphs that were embedded into the walls of ancient Kemet, which are in the United States, okay, are now resurrecting in me, and that information, the coding is being released. Now, I talked about the woman from the last time I had contact with these women who had binary codes in their afro. I want you to take a look at Miss One. Miss One has binary codes in her afro. I just noted when I wanted to paste the picture on here, I didn't even think about it. I was like, holy cow, they showed us Miss One. And in her afro, she had mother freaking binary codes in her afro. So I thought that was amazing. And even in Wicked, because even in Wicked, they show the Wicked Witch of the East, which would become the sister that was favorited, but was also crippled. That's the one who would be perceivably the one that was killed in The Wizard of Oz when you show Wicked. Okay. And if we add her to the whole mix and how that's set up, I don't want to bring that in because I haven't really, I would have to pull in all the aspects of what showed in Wicked. I did enjoy the movie Wicked. A lot of symbolism, a lot of occultism, a lot of breakdowns. Amazing. Okay. But we also understand what created the so-called Wicked Witch of the West. Okay. So in that duality showing up, many of you are experiencing domination of characters now coming in main focus in your lives. The sidebar characters, the subline characters, the characters that don't really hold much strength or fortitude, is no longer. The domineering characters are showing up at the end of the video game. The timelines are merging. We've got a convergence and a basic bleed over and a rewriting, almost like a script being rewritten and kind of upgraded. You ever get a script? Some of you are writers, right? And, you know, sometimes you do edits or, you know, revisions, right? And you end up, like having to say, well, this is a good storyline, but we need to upgrade. Kind of like when you revision something, it's kind of like when you get a Wicked, right? From the stories of Wizard of Oz, or you get a whiz from it. You know what I mean? These are like revisions, but literally they're alternative timelines where those what we perceive to be revisions here are domineering scenarios in those timelines. And what's amazing about it is that as we're going closer to reset, all of those, and I want you to watch because I would love to hear your comments, because in my life, it's happening like in real time. Before, it would take time, it would kind of bleed over. I kind of think, oh, this person represents that. I have main characters that were a part of my world now showing up domineering, and they're replaced immediately. So personalities are different. Personalities are stronger. They have more of when I met them in the game, they have more of those personalities. So the default characters that you probably met in the future, remember, it's always back to the future, because remember, where we went was the past. We were walking to the past. Now we're going back to the future. So now we're meeting the higher versions of ourselves, the alternate versions of yourself. You may wake up and you'll have an upgraded version of yourself show up. You're like, oh, God darn it. Like, yo, my skin is looking amazing. Like, what's happening? But then your appetite won't allow you to eat junk. You're like, oh, this must be an up version of myself. Like, how come I have an aversion to this particular thing and I didn't have it before? Because it's an upgraded version. You've already converged with another a part of yourself in the multiverse, but it's a higher tier because we're going back to the future, and that's the back to the future are more advanced. Whereas we're going to the past, we were meeting more remedial, more focused on, savage kind of behavior, lower vibrational, kind of just I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't judge it, right? Just more primitive, that's judgment, right? More primitive mindset when we're going into the realm, when we're going to the past. We were seeing just a lower version, less technology, were remedial, everything took longer. You just, when people were prejudiced, they were really racist, they were biased, got people throwing stones at people, killing children, shooting them in the head, kind of like where some of that remedial behavior is happening now. But we're going back to the future. That's why you're seeing a lot of that's why you're starting to see a lot of technology being resurrected, because it already existed in your future. But because you're coming from the past, Back to the Future kind of speaks to that. Because you're coming from the past, everything just seems like too much. You're like, how come it's coming so quick? But because we're getting a quickening that's going, I'm sorry, my lip gloss is, sorry, let me research. Am I going too far? I'm getting ringing in my ears. Is someone talking to me? Bye. That's not appropriate. Where's my lip gloss? Oh, here it is. I'm always putting lip gloss on alive. I used to live I moved from a really dry place, and I'm just obsessed with glossy lips lately. I was like that little too. So now we're we're experiencing character replacements in real time. Like I talked about, now when I go to certain places, I have character replacements like right now. Like I see upgraded versions. Like I saw one of my family members, and they're an upgraded version of five. I'm sorry. There's a kitty cat outside, black cat, like in the Matrix, harassing my dogs. You can't hear them because I think I have sound counseling on my thingamajiggy. Okay, so now because of that, so now we're going to start to see remnants of advanced technology where we come from. We won't be able to wake up out of the simulation if we're remedial, if we're still celebrating dogmas, if we're still caught up in religions, if we're still biased towards, because how are you going to wake up in a realm where there's like bioborgs all over the place, like basic androids like running, you got full-on holograms showing up saying, hey, good evening, would you like, remember the living library with this brown guy, it was like a crash site, I forgot where it was it Tom Cruise in that movie? I forgot what it was, and he was accessing an old broken down library, but it still had a simulated character. It was like a brown man, and he basically was like, what do you want to access? What do you want to see? What books would you like me to show you? Like, that is the future that we're returning to. And because we've been living, we went to the past, we kind of forgot who we were. It's, we forgot that we came from that. We forgot that we were put under a state of, what are the gentlemen who was online, Barry used to say, temporal aphasia. It was his favorite statement. I think it was from one of the characters in Star Trek, or was it in Star Wars? I think it was Star Trek. It's called temporal aphasia. It's kind of where you lose lucidity and you lose awareness because you're in a different differential of different dimensional shifting, or it's like there's too much of an imbalance between the dimensional space, so that you lose your conscious state of awareness. So that's that temporal aphasia. So you experience that as you go further in the past, but as you start returning, as many of you have actually witnessed yourself, as you're returning, you're noticing that a lot of your memory is coming back. A lot of melanated people, and I gotta give myself credit because no one will do it. A lot of people do. But I'm just, I was one of the first people who told the brown people online, and you could go, because I've been online more than most people. So I told the indigenous people from the United States, I said, you are from Africa. And there's no shade to Africa, because Mother Africa is absolutely gorgeous. It has a lot of different countries. All the resources come from here, nothing wrong with it. But when I made that video many years ago, I remember getting such negativity, like such pushback. But I had known from my own family members, from being from the Kolianga tribe, the Carib tribe, because we have, and also many of us still speak some of the Arawak language in the Caribbean, even to this day. Another person said, we wish we didn't lose our language. We never did. We just kind of incorporated it. And the others from the West called it patois. They called it Creole. They called it Ebonics because they didn't understand the language, but it really was your native indigenous tongues, just fusing it with Western words or, European languages like French, Italian, Dutch, German, like they'll call it patois Creole or, Ebonics. That's your indigenous tongue. But when I had made that video many, many years ago, and you could go back, I mean, look at the reaction. Most brown people didn't accept it. I think 90% of the people that I met, or maybe, yeah, like 80, they were open and receptive to it. They never heard of it, but I gave them information that they were unaware of. That's a temporal aphasia. So it's like the whole thing with like one person waking up a whole group of others. It's kind of like I opened up the door, Pandora's box, and then all of a sudden, later on, 5 years later, everyone's accepting that they are indigenous to the Americas, which I knew from my lineage. Many a $5 Indian challenges me, but they always get humbled because I've been here in the Americas for generations. We are originally from here. I actually look like the indigenous that are written and drawn on the walls in Rome. In the first accounts of the Arawak, the Carib, the Taino that they saw, I look exactly the same. And I always tell people, you're over here saying we're not indigenous, but I still look like who we look like when you first met us, when you came upon you from Europe. A lot of people didn't accept it at the time, but I love that now that is understood because now people are going back to the future and now they have access to their cellular memories and they remembered that their ancestors were here. They remembered when they were the enemies were creating, because social media is created by the dark Kabbalists. We talked about the Daros. There's some sort of sub-tier human. They try to control historical facts, and they kind of rewrite things to kind of write themselves in as an alternate, as a character. Usually what they do is you usurp other people's culture. So what they'll do is say, oh, we're the people, and then they'll change the narrative because they usually take control of public speaking and public formats so that they can change and flip mode it. Okay, because the original Jews, the Sephardic Jews, are in the Americas and also obviously in Europe. But in Europe at the time, there were a lot of brown people there. If you look at the Moors, and even they couldn't change everything. So, when people are very ignorant and they say terrible things about brown people, and they say that brown people aren't from Europe. Well, all you have to do is go to like any sort of, I don't know if they have microfiche anymore because that's how we checked it, but all you have to go is to periodicals that were 1913 and before, and you'll see them all talking about dark people, dark Jews. You can tell the difference between a Moor, a Jew, or a Gentile. Okay, who are they talking about? Okay, so a lot of the historical information has been changed, and that's why I love that Rod Hayes and Brother Rich really went deep into that. I love that is a conversation that's had, and people are receptive to it because they forgot, because they had experienced temporal aphasia, and Christianity and Islam and certain forms of religion were kind of impressed upon them, which capped certain information and access to their ancestral memories. Okay, along with shots that were, I don't want to talk about what you've given when you're born, but those shots are also meant to suppress your cellular memories. So you aren't able to access the Akashic records of your ancestral memories, like animals and insects have access to. They know what to do when they're born. They know what their instructions are automatically in them. Okay, humans have that. We aren't any different. We have that. So I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of the memories are coming back. And I love that the receptivity and people understanding who and what they are and where they're coming from. And it's only going to get more intense, more information coming in, more data being able to be accessed, and more of you knowing and standing in who you are authentically, and disallowing others who have no affinity for you, who do not like you, who have made it a business and a job to just misinform you and to project things that are opposite of what you are, so that it confuses you, so that they can take on your identity. Okay? These are shapeshifters. They're cosplayers. Okay, we did that whole scenario in the Biden, the pooping president's administration, and I don't even call it an administration. It was a joke. Okay, when he was telling people that they could be anything that they thought they wanted to be that day, and you heard me every time coming on Zoom, on YouTube, saying, I'm a trans frog, I'm a trans gay white Jewish man. and a black man on payday. You know what I mean? That was that whole administration telling people that they could choose what they wanted based on mood, feelings, emotions, and take on that character, even if they weren't born it. That's because that's what they do. They were initiating that because that's how they were being able to hold power. Look in Europe. Europe, especially in Russia and Eastern Europe, look what happened in Europe when these characters came in, these Deros. They had some sort of mind control. I still don't know if it was a technology they were using or mind. In a lot of the archives with the Deros, you'll see like this weird kind of funneling these spirals in images. So I think I'm likened to, I like to think that it was most likely some sort of mind control technology, mind control that they innately had, just they're made up and they're able to control the mind. Because how do you take over all of Europe? Like, how do you steal the identity of a people and then totally kill out the original people so that you could keep cosplaying them? Like, that is some sort of entity. And again, you could say they're alien, but how do we know what an alien is? Maybe it's not that they're alien, maybe you aren't from this realm. And when you come into this video game, you're incepted from the beginning of your video game with these creatures who have dominated this realm. Maybe that's written in the script of this matrix. Maybe it's written in the script of this dimensional space we call the hologram. Who's to say? But this, all to say is you have all the control in the video game. That's the one thing that in Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz, and the Wiz, that Glinda, which we found out wasn't the good witch in Wicked. Okay, we found out she wasn't a good witch. Had said you always had the ability to go home, right? You always have the ability to go home. So even in her engaging, now we know is most likely by choice, and her bleeding over into another dimensional realm to experience aspects of herself. We talked about that the last time, aspects of herself through the Scarecrow, so on. And we talked about the Scarecrow, the Lion, the Tin Man. All of those characters were characters that coexisted outside of the firmament, outside in her real realm, as her uncles, as her aunties, as the wicked, the woman that tried to steal her dog. They were characters there, but they were replaced with other characters inside of this new realm. So these are other dimensional beings in another multiverse where she was coexisting. She merged into another dimension where she coexisted, where the characters are very similar to the characters outside where she came from. So it's very important for us to understand that there aren't any victims here. Even though it feels crazy, even if it feels like you may be attacked, you feel it, but it isn't real. It's your form of victimization is just it's false. If you keep playing into it like, oh, I'm a Black person, I'm always being abused. Actually, if you are a brown person, it means that you're a stronger character because you get to experience more heightened aggression, which means that you have earned characteristically more points or more, you accrued more experiences to take on an avatar that's melanated, to experience more attacks, what you perceive as attacks, because it just means that you are capable of overcoming them. You wouldn't have came in this realm in that avatar if you couldn't. That's an earned character. It's an earned avatar. To be melanated when everything on television, everything's meant it's just, look at Pac-Man. I'm just saying, at the beginning of Pac-Man, the first game, Pac-Man is like eating a cherry, chilling out, chilling, getting cherries, going past, the one goes, no stress. Then, when you get to the medium level of Pac-Man, well, you get a cherry, but you got a duck and dimble because the ghosts are coming, there's more than one, and they coming at you left and right. The finale of Pac-Man, when you're trying to get to the goal line and you at the highest stage, God darn it, there's ghosts coming at every angle. You can't even get a chair. You're just trying to get around to make sure you're not gobbled up by the ghost. That's a higher position. Okay? If you're living, that's why I always say to you, and you religious people should know this, it's harder to get in heaven when you have the most wealth, because the most comfort and the most comfortable positions and those who have the most heightened amount of wealth are usually the the ones unable and haven't the accrued status to be able to exit this simulation, or they might just be default characters within the simulation itself. Okay, so you know, brown people, you aren't victims. Nobody here, if you're real, I don't know if you're a simulation or, you know, part of the NPCs. You're just characters playing parts to justify whatever is being vilified. Watch Resident Evil. You know, all the, you know, who's playing the zombies? Somebody's got to play the zombies, right? Nobody. Those are NPCs. Okay, so when you see a whole bunch of brown people, you know, chucking it, you know, because all they do is show brown people all day being criminals as if nobody else is. That's primary to target one group. That's what lets me know where you are on the status role of the simulation. You know, because obviously everybody does crime. And if you get enough poor people, all poor people do crime. But if I only show one poor people of one background all the time, then everybody thinks it's only brown people that are doing crime. If I just hyper focus one group of people and vilify them all day, and we know who creates social media. So, you know, the same people who call themselves whistleblowers, like this woman online, I really like her information. She's like a Patriot's wife. What's her name? I like her. She's a lunar woman. She don't like brown women. And all she does is when something bad happens, she finds the one brown person who does it, even though there's 15 other lunar people, and she hyper focuses on it and says that they're DEI. Even though we know now DEI is a statement and only, isn't that ironic? DEI, the only people, the top people who actually get DEI positions top, and you can look this up, are lunar women. But she'll put like this on her screen and she'll show one person that she just doesn't like brown people, but her information is great. I try to just pull away from it because we're in a simulation. I understand that she's a character. She could be real. I don't know. But she, you know, she likes to pull in the one brown person that does something negative and make it seem like that's all DEI, which if she's a great, that's how you know a lot of these whistleblowers are full of ish. They're not, because if they just did basic research, you would know that brown people are at the bottom of that list. Even LGBT gets more perks than brown people. Affirmative action, they don't. Any brown person you see who's a doctor, a nurse, who's flying a plane, they are the top tier. They've had to roll over 20, they had to do so much more than 100,000 people just to get that position. So to even call someone a DEI, it's just, you're woefully ignorant and you're purposefully perpetuating the status quo of whatever you're being socially engineered to think. So that's all already lets me know that you're limited cognitively, and you're also a byproduct of being easily manipulated by social media, even though you say you're calling out social media. Because if you're calling out social media for being liars, but then you only believe the perpetration, the propaganda of brown people as being negative all the time, then I already know you're under mind control. Because you would understand that 60% of most brown people in the United States have more or above middle class, and only brown poor people do crimes. You will rarely see a brown middle class child ever rob anyone, but you will see that in other groups. But that's what's perpetuated all the time. So that's why cops can't differentiate between a brown boy who comes from a middle and upper class brown family, and he sees them the same as a child that's grown up in the hood. He can't differentiate because he's constantly under social media and social propaganda, which perpetuates that all brown people and brown children are criminals. Okay, that's just a byproduct of social conditioning. And we're in a simulation, and we are the villains. And I think it's awesome. I actually think that you should pat yourself if you are a living being at the 44. You know, because I still think it's only 44 people. You could disagree. I don't care. But I only think there's 44 people in here. I really do, like in a video game. But if you're one of the 44, it doesn't even matter. It's a compliment. Actually, the fact that they're constantly putting so much emphasis on you, you know, you got the the colonized honeypot simps constantly making videos of how brown women are disgusting and awful, but everyone's trying to get big lips. Everyone wants a big butt. You know what I mean? Everyone goes and sits in a fake and bake to get a tan, but they're the most ugly women. I mean, and they're the most covenant and kidnapped and sexually trafficked, but they're the ugliest women in this realm. It's amazing to me. That's why I'm saying don't listen to it. It's all part of the simulation. And I don't get offended anybody else. I'm talking to brown people because they need to hear that. So you aren't a victim. You're actually being revered, and you're actually letting you know that you're at a higher level where you could accrue exiting this realm. if you aren't caught up in the multiple traps. Because remember, the higher you are, the more you have to have a certain mindset. You can't be so, permissible to getting caught up in a honey trap. Like if you are, you're not that high. If a pretty girl and a light skin and a smile and some straight hair blue eyes can, make you fall, if you jungle fever is like your ultimate goal because you just feel a certain way, then you're not really here for exiting the simulation. You just want to enjoy the video game and come back and redo it again and stay in another cycle. Okay. Because you would know that that's a setup. That's a honey trap setup. That's literally a jungle. Remember jungle fever? That's a jungle fever honey trap trap for you. And a lot of men get caught up into it because that is what's being perpetuated. Whatever is being trended and pushed, and that's why you see a lot of commercials that put brown men and lunar women on television, or you see a lot of lunar men and brown women because they're pushing that. They're not pushing it to the lunar community, even though the lunar community could be affected by it. That is for the brown community. That is to put that in your mindset so that it's permissible because that's what they want you to do. Okay. So it's just like tattoos. Remember the tattoos were out and everybody wanted to get a tattoo because they saw, and I'm so grateful for the elder. Big up to Dr. Blair, because, I had such a question about tattoos because I was in a mindset, if they're pushing something, I know something's wrong. That's how you know if someone's really cognizant. If they're always caught up in trends, they always they got the kukarachi shot because everybody else got it. They got tattoos because everybody else got it. Those are people very susceptible to mind control. You got to be careful to have those people around you because if they were always caught up in trends, they're always influenced by outsiders and what says what's good and what's not. Those people will throw you under the bus when the next stage comes with the smart cities and the concentration camps and the lockdowns. They're going to throw you under the bus because they're too conditioned. They're too mind controllable. People who will always follow trends and follow the narrative of everything outside of themselves, you got to be concerned about. But even with tattoos, like everybody, like back, what is that show? Black Ink came on. Brown people weren't susceptible to tattoos, but guess what? They made a show to focus on the brown community and getting tattoos. Now you see them with tattoos all over their face and so on. You know what I mean? And also, it takes you out of the ability to be able to leave because guess what? You got that black goo in you. And as you see that black goo, and because most people, you ask the average person, what was in a tattoo? Did you ask them what chemical was in a tattoo? What was made of it? What was made? 90% of the people who got it never even asked what was in it. But they'll tell you they're vegan. They won't put an animal product in their body. They won't drink dairy, but they'll get a tattoo and not question what kind of material, what kind of ink is in there. What is it made of? But that's what I'm saying. It's being caught up. There are a lot of traps in the simulation. And if you are highly susceptible to always being influenced and motivated because of trends or because of fear bait, then you are always going to be a byproduct of staying in the simulation. You would have to be someone who questioned and knew that if something was being promoted to you, that should be something you should question. When kukarachis came out, and many of you were with me for a long time, so I really adore you for supporting me because some people, really, really had a problem with me telling people not to take the kuka. And I was the first person to come out, and I got to say this because people think I just came on a block. I was the first person to say, this is a setup. Why? Is because I already saw the setup like 6 years before it. When New York City, a homegirl had her children in school, and no, it wasn't 6 years. It was what, 2015 or 16, I had a friend who had children in a city school, and all of a sudden, they didn't want to give adults shots or anything like that, or ever give any parents any issues if they didn't want to give their children whatever. But they were finding parents. Some of you remember Connecticut and New York, y'all put your hands up. Remember, y'all in Connecticut and New York, y'all were the first responders. No, not responders. You were the first to be poked at for the beta test because they were finding parents. Remember you in New York, $2,500 if your child did not get updated on the brah. Some of you remember that. Do you guys remember that? Y'all all remember that. $2,500. And that was like right before. So when it happened, big up to Gail, Rainbow Food Rocks. Where's Gail? Gail was in here because her sister was in New York and Gail was in Arizona. Is Rainbow Food Rocks in here? Because she was the one, I did an interview with her, and you know they took every video down, y'all. You got to remember, y'all. See, some of you have been with me a long time. Remember that video I made with Gail, and we were talking about them pushing the so-and-so. Where's Gail? Gail's not in here? Gail's not here, right? Darn. Gail from Rainbow, we did a couple of videos on Blog Talk and so on. Do you remember? It was on YouTube. They took every video that me and Gail did, y'all. That was what, 2000? Where's Gail? Gail, usually she's here. She's probably working. 2015 or 16 or 17, it was around that time, in that time break. And then we had another friend who was going to be fine. So we already saw them starting to push and started to, so I already knew, because I was conscious. I was always conscious that if they're doing that to high school children, that means that they're getting ready to push something along. So that was a conversation we had on the Blog Talk. Something was coming down the line. So that's when they came out with the cucarachis, and I made that video that many of you saw before it even was announced, because a homegirl called me from China saying something was going on. They took that video. So that's what I'm saying, y'all. Social media is being controlled by the opposition, the ops. Anything that they promote, and someone said, listen, let me say this. For everyone who's saying I'm afraid to be on TikTok, I have no issue with TikTok, y'all. I just told you that TikTok is now being totally surveyed for those who had anonymity initially, because the Daros wanted to find out who was pro-Palestinian, and they could not get their IP. So that's why they switched over. So now they got all the IPs of people who were pro-Palestine, so they could come at them and dox them and all that craziness. That's all that was. I'm not afraid of TikTok. I don't have a problem. Someone challenged me to do a TikTok. If you want to challenge me, you'll see me on TikTok, because I'm real petty. Okay, no, I'm not afraid of it. They already know about me. I've already been followed, talked about. They vilified me on YouTube. I mean, everything. They've already done everything. So I don't have a problem being on any, because they already follow me. It is what it is. For me to talk, I'm not saying unalived, all that BS. I don't know. Y'all say it because you want to get paid or so on. I'll say what I want to say. Okay, that's just what it is. I come from the generation, I'm an OG on YouTube. So all that, saying, like, not saying the right words, not saying so-and-so, like, I'll say cucarachis because then they won't take down the video, but I'm not going to say unalived and all the I'll say murdered, killed. If it's out of the algorithm, oh well. You know what I mean? Whoever comes. I ain't saying all that craziness. You know what I mean? They want you to change your words so that you stop using words that vilify them. That's the things they're doing. Okay. Yeah, but I'm not afraid of, somebody said I'm afraid of TikTok. Don't challenge me, because I'll be on TikTok and I won't be doing a what is that? What are those three movement dances? I won't be doing that. I'll just be going ham, and I'll wait until they kick me off. Don't give me, if I'm petty enough, you'll see me on TikTok telling it like it is. I'm gonna get Rod. If Rod's on vacation, call Rod. If Rod will come on with me on TikTok, we just gonna go ham and see how far we can go. I told you on X I'm gonna do it. I don't have a problem with it. No, I'm not afraid. They already follow me. I'm just telling people who thought you had anonymity before they changed it over. Now you don't. That's all it is. It's a spy network. But so is YouTube, so is IG. They're spying on everybody. Okay. It is what it is. We're going toward technology. There's no secrets, y'all. You think that there's secrets. There's no secrets, okay? If I'm eating a hamburger on Tuesday, shove it in my mouth, and saying I'm a vegetarian on Monday, you're going to find out. Someone's going to be recording me. Remember the vegan thing? People are getting busted eating full-on McDonald's hamburgers of that. Why are you eating McDonald's hamburgers? You can get other hamburgers, right? Why don't you just make a hamburger? Remember the whole thing? And I think, what's his name? Remember, oh God, the Raw. Remember it was on Raw? Oh God, what's his name? Why am I forgetting? Maybe I'm going into another realm and I don't even know these people that well. What's his name? He was in Raw. That's a really good comedy show. Oh God, what is it? Eddie Murphy. I lose my thoughts. changing timelines all the time. I forget where I came from. Remember when he was like, he made a joke about his mom making a hamburger and had onions popping out of it. And he said he got McDonald's and it's not a McDonald's burger. And he said, I got McDonald's. And then he cried because his mom made him a good, fat, juicy burger with onions. He should have been happy he had a real burger, because nowadays you don't even know if it's human meat you're eating or animal meat. You don't even know where that meat is coming from. He was upset about eating that crazy burger that his mama made him from home because McDonald's was the standard. But look what McDonald's is doing now. I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? Everything is flip mode. So I'm just saying, in this timeline, just be careful, because anything that they promote on social media that's a mass push. When I say push, it means that it's being pushed out in the algorithm. People who are getting bigger channels that get a lot of things, if you notice, those are the ones that they support. So that's what whoever, this controlled opposition all online. I hope you know that. You'll have people who tell you 90% of the truth, but the 10% that they tell you are wrong is what they want you to fall off the cliff for. So you have to, that's why, you know, there was a young lady, and no shade to the young lady, who questioned me about the pole shift. She was like, I don't understand about this pole shift. I don't believe. And I told her, I said, you don't have to ever get validation from me. You can go to a library and you can go get several books on the magnetosphere and the pole shift. Do you know that she didn't even respond to that? She was like, oh, she just wanted to see videos of people making videos about pole shifts, because people don't want to do their own research. They want to listen to somebody else's perspective and their opinion about what they may have read or interfaced with or done to them. That's lazy. Y'all are lazy. I could tell you that the moon is falling, but why would you believe me? Why wouldn't you just vet out and say, okay, FleurBrun is usually on point, but let me just validate that. You should always validate what people say. Everybody wants to get information from somebody else's perspective. You're going to be lost because people have biases. Like this young lady that I listen to, I love her news. She always talks about everything, but she hates brown women. She always vilifies brown people. There was a guy whose channel I was on. He had blackface on. I'm like, I can't be with you. You understand? So you can't, you got to be willing to validate things yourself. You got to be able to validate things yourself, and you can't be lazy, and you can't get things off video and TikTok. That's another reason why I had an issue with TikTok, because everybody's going to TikTok and watching people making comments about other people's comments. That's crazy. It's okay to make comments about it, but like people are just making platforms, and call me judgmental because I come from old school YouTube when people were making videos based on their own readings and findings, their own scholarship, their own research, their own occurrences, their own wisdom, and then sharing it. You got people making videos on other people's comments on other people's videos. It's perpetual, like it's dumbing people down. If you say you don't believe in the pole shift, why wouldn't you just go to the library and prove me wrong? If I'm telling you that you can go to any library, even the most federally controlled, militant, governmentally controlled, censored library, and you can look up multitude of books on the magnetosphere shifting and pole shifts through time. How come you wouldn't do it? And you would just come back and say, oh, I think you mean internal. No, motherfreaker, I meant external. And because you aren't cognizant and you're lazy, you won't even do your due diligence to go read a book on it, one book. Some of you got to start reading again. You can't get all of your information from YouTube. If you say that I'm crazy, if you say that what I'm saying is wrong, I always tell you, do not believe anything I say. You can quickly go and verify it by looking it up, and not on Google. Go to the goddamn library, go to the microfiche, go to the old archives, go get the old archives and look up some of the things I'm saying. Even with the concept of the indigenous, like someone challenged me, they backed off real quick. It was a lunar man, he apologized. I got to give him props because he didn't have to. But he was like, you people keep always trying to say that you're native and you're not. I said, but what makes you think we're not? Because I am, because I know my background, okay? Oh, well, you could be. So that you could be, no, but what makes you think that? He was like, oh, because all books. I said, well, why don't you go look at this book and this book? And I said, when you read just 2 lines off this page, you come back to me and tell me that the brown people in Americas weren't told and reclassified over generations so that they would be further and further from the indigenous. That's why the people on the reservations are called native and not indigenous, because they were brought here and they don't look like the indigenous here. They look Asiatic because they're Mongolians from Asia. Okay, when he went and looked at the book that I told him to reference, guess what he said, y'all? Lunar Man, and this is a professor. I'm not gonna shade him because I know him for years. So guess what he did? He apologized. Because as easy as I could tell you something, it is just as easy for you to go and verify it. And I gave him something so he could verify it, and it gave him clarification in a way that he could receive it. Okay? Don't play with me, because I'm as much as you think that I'm young, I'm not. I'm seasoned. I am about that life, and I am quite a woman of a certain age. So though I play with you and everything, I am quite vetted in research, because that was how I began my scholarship in life, especially in the University of Life and university itself. Okay. So as we go into, and this is all relative, because you say, why is this relative to the whole convergence? Because this is the information that's resurging, because it was already there. Remember, you had the temporal aphasia, you forgot who you were, but now you're getting all the information accessible because the data is now accessible. Always before a pole shift, all information is revealed. That's why they was called the Age of Aquarius. Aquarius, do you know Age of Aquarius? It's the woman pouring the ladle over the earth. What is the water representing? The cleansing, the information, pouring life back into the planet. That's all your information. Your ancestral information is coming back. You can't hold that long. The temporal aphasia only lasts when we're in the past. When we come back to the future, all of that data gets dumped back. Now, why you'll have some issues is if you keep participating with this bioweaponry scheme that your simulated villains are constantly perpetuating and promoting to you. So if every time you go and you take a blah blah, and every time you got something on, you go blah blah, because then one person say, oh, I'm not getting the blah blah, but they'll take a shot in your stomach for Ozempic or Wendigo, whatever it's called. So you wouldn't get the shot. Do you understand? And it's being promoted. This being promoted. This is what I'm saying. People are in the mind control. Even people you say are mass aware, they're not. Because they'll say, oh, I'm not gonna get that cucarachas because I'm mad woke. You know what I'm saying? I'm woke. I won't take that. But then they want to lose like 50 pounds and they'll go take a shot in their stomach of freaking Ozempic. What makes you think if they can't get you one way, it's a simulation, it's a game. The point is to always trick you. It's part of the game. It wouldn't be fun or it wouldn't be purposeful if you weren't having to learn how to navigate through it without always stepping on a landmine. Okay? Oh, well, we'll say, oh, we just promote veganism. Now, if you've been a party to this platform for a long time, veganism was a whole psyop. And a lot of people, unfortunately, who basically fell on the train of veganism, and these are natural animal lovers. These weren't people who were health conscious. They were susceptible to mind control. They didn't say nothing about veganism until it was promoted online. And then everybody's a vegan. I'm a vegan. Oh, I only eat plant-based things. It said plant-based. It didn't say human. It said it isn't animal-based. Doesn't mean it's plant. It could be human-based, right? But a lot of the vegans now, if they were in it 5 to 6 years, because remember that last video, what was that video I made like 8 years ago? Are all suffering from heart palpitations, adrenal issues, a lot of thyroid issues, a lot of hormonal issues, a lot of depreciation of the nutrients. I mean, a host of things have happened. And also when cucarachas came out, that was a community that was affected more than you knew. Okay? Because in order to have overcome some of what they were doing with the bioweapon, you would have had some fat. You needed some fat in you, especially around the brain, because it's an insulator. Okay? And they did a good job promoting that for 8 years. This is a long-term game, y'all. They had they had taken on this game a long time ago. So when you see things that are rolled out 10 years ago, they rolled it out and saw the effects, because they all, they've been doing experiments on sub parts of the population. So they've been doing experiments. So they already knew what the outcome would be, and then adding active ingredients like bioweapons to, mitigate any sort of healthiness you would have got from that. Okay, so I'm just saying, just be careful trending, because that is part of the game's tricks. Those are the booby traps set up in a simulation. Those are the mines that you will walk on if you participate in constantly navigating your life based on what you're seeing and following every trend that is being placed on you. Even down to them telling you what types of clothing you should wear, what color clothing you wear, the dyes they'll put in clothing and then promote a certain color to you. And some people are so mind controllable, they'll start wearing this specific color, not realizing that that particular dye that they created was some sort of bioweapon or an ingredient that was needed to activate a bioweapon. These beings in here are really clever, and they're very Kevorkian, or rather Mengler-like. They're just long-term scientists, and they have already worked out all the kinks of all of the things necessary in order to create the perfect storm, cytostorm. So, when you thinking that you're ahead of the game, but then you're not susceptible to one type of mind control programming, but you're susceptible to another, it just means that you need to start looking at things from a very long-term point of view. Okay, it's not to criticize anyone. I'm not saying that. Like, I had a great elder, big up to Dr. Delva Blair, who told me, don't you ever get a tattoo. But that was because I was qualified to have that access to that information, based on me being conscious before that. So in my game, in my level of the simulation, I had access to codes and higher level codes that would always keep me in a certain layer and level. So I wasn't going to be incepted by that. It doesn't mean I wasn't incepted by other things, but that wasn't going to be one of them. Because the first thing he said is, that is insane. And he wasn't even going into the nano. He talked about the black goo, but he wasn't even going to the nano, which we know is in the tattoo ink. And it's long-term, because it's actually, the nano is actually embedded in multiple dermis of your skin, in the dermis. So it sits in your organs long-term. And I always, when I made that video a long time ago, you can go look at the video when I was talking about, the promotion of tattoos. When they turn on the 5G, the 6G, a lot of the people who have that are feeling stinging in their arms. They're feeling like, they're shaking. They feel like certain things going on with their body, and they don't realize it's because they have participated with a bioweapon that was socially engineered for over a decade. And now they are a byproduct of some form of frequency weaponry that can be utilized against them at any time. If you're a young person and you haven't gotten any tattoos, you should pat yourself on the shoulder, because, we discussed this a while ago. It's very strange that every single person has a tattoo. If you don't think that is a great job that your government and your social media and the Darrows have done, you don't realize it. How you know it's successful is because the majority of people have it. That's how you know it's successful. It's a socially engineered, this very successful program, because it was socially engineered for a long period of time. And look, the majority of people have now got tattoos. And when I talk about tattoos, many people get offended. Oh my God, what are you talking about? Da, da, da. Okay, so how come you didn't ask what was in it? That means they did a good job, because it didn't matter what was in it. It was being promoted, it was being glorified, and it was being perpetuated. And they made sure every community, especially the brown community, who wasn't notably a community that would ever get tattoos, they made sure they pinpointed that community to promote and get a show that would glorify it, so that young people would be constantly seeing other young people. Because remember, a lot of social engineering and mind control programming is catchy. You think it's viruses that are catchy? No, ideology is catchy. When you're seeing people walking around, in certain ways, and they look a certain way, and it's being perpetuated as positive, that's why the whole trans thing was positive. Look at how that ran. If you look before the social engineering of transsexualism, look before that. You'll note that before that, no one was promoting that. No one was thinking about it. But let's look at a couple of years of promoting it, showing celebrities that are it, putting in everybody's, putting it on the front stage of everything, giving perks to the people who are trans, giving more visualization on, not only social media, like on every sort of like personal, like you go to the drive-through, you see a man, he's got nails. I mean, that was a great propaganda scheme. It worked because not only did so many people believe in being a trans, a lot of people will defend, and people who are trans who normally didn't have that propensity or weren't even exposed to that community. The community is very small, y'all. It's very small. I grew up in New York City. It's a very small community, and we didn't call it transsexual. We called it like transvestites. They don't even use that word anymore. Transvestites, transsexuals. No, transvestites, and what else? What was another one? Transsexuals, right? I think it was transsexuals. That was something that was used. I mean, it's a very small community. It wasn't, and again, not a negative community. New York City, big up to our old trans people. They were in that community. They've been existing for a long period of time. It's a very small community, and you would only be interfacing with the community, like if you were in like the Village. I grew up in New York, so in the Village, big up to all those who in New York, the boroughs. The Village is a very homosexual friendly place. So you would see places where there would be a theme of trans, and sometimes they were like performers. So they would you go places and they would do drag, right? Drag shows. And it was very beautiful. It was very different. Cross-dressing, right? Cross-dressing. You would see it and you wouldn't think anything of it. And nor would you you wouldn't think you wanted to be it, but you could admire the people that were participating. You could see them as a group and respect what they're doing in their world. But it wasn't something that you would promote to children. You wouldn't have transsexuals dressed like sexual deviants going to a library to read for kids doing a split when his balls are falling out of his panties with nest stockings. That wasn't something you would ever see a transsexual do, a cross-dresser do. It wasn't even in their mindset, at least the ones I grew up with. And then all of a sudden, look at how quick. So you gotta figure out where you want to be in this next reset. This is the finale, y'all, of the video game we call The Matrix. All villains are on deck. You never played, I tell you about Resident Evil. You guys say I'm old school. I am. That's the only real game I really did well at, other than like Centipede, Space Galaxy, Qbert. I know if you know these names, big up to you, Generation Xers. Qbert. I like Qbert. Do you guys know what Qbert was? I love Qbert. He used to like jump on the boxes. No one ever talks about Qbert. I saw him in a video, a movie, when they talked about like video games taking over. Remember Qbert? I love Qbert. Centipede. I was really good at Centipede. Donkey Kong. I still have my Donkey Kong game. I love those games. That was that's my generation. The young people have good games now, but that I was just so when I got up on a new game, I remember I talked about Centipede to someone. I was at a gathering, and I was like, "Oh, I love this game, Centipede," and everyone they were like, "How old are you?" And I was like, "Why?" They were like, "Why would you know Centipede?" Like, honey, hunty. I am a woman of a certain age. I've been saying it for like 10 years, though. I've been saying I'm a woman of a certain age, even though I felt that way. But, like they just don't realize. Generation Xers, we still look good. That's no shade to everybody else, but we actually ate real food, right? Even if we were starting to, microwaves were coming in. My parents didn't have microwaves until I was older, and I didn't use microwaves. I haven't used microwaves. If you think I look youthful, I'm not. I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm grateful for it. I love my age. I just don't mention it because a lot of you like to dox people and search people out, and I think you're mentally ill. So I just keep that to myself. I'm very proud of my age. Okay. I come from a beautiful generation. And why Generation Xers? It doesn't matter if you light skin, dark skin. We fare well. We just do. Big up to all the Generation Xers, y'all. I'm saying we played out in the sun. We got bruck up. We still ate real candy if we had candy. That's why, you know. But they always joke because I always say Cubert. Like, Cubert? What do you know about that? Yeah. Yeah. I'm grateful. Yeah. We'll see how long that lasts. You know what I'm saying? Because stress, this is the finale. Okay. So when I talk about games, and I was talking about that, like I used to play Resident Evil, and that lasts. Anybody play games? Who's a video gamer in here? What are gamers? The young people are gamers. We're the Gen millennials still play video games, and then Gen Ys? Is it, who's it? Gen Zs. No, Gen Zs. Y'all are good at that. Video games. But you know, I'm talking to the Gen Zs. When you get to that finale, y'all, you ever play the hardest level? Like I used to start Resident Evil on the easy level. That was like, oh my God, okay. I could get better. I could do with intermediate. And then I would do the intermediate. But then when you get to the hardest level, y'all, all the villains are on deck. You play Tomb Raider? Yeah, all the villains are on deck, y'all. This is going to be the most exciting video game. All your characters. Okay, so let's go back to the characters and the multiverse converging. Get your characters together, y'all. They're all you. They're all you. It's the 9. It's the 9. They're all you. So get your characters together. All of your characters. Now be careful because you got some villains in your roster. And I noticed this when I had Zoom and groups, I always got villains on my roster. It's just part of the video game. It comes with the default video game. You know how you have a video game and unfortunately you got villains in it because that's part of the game. That's just what it is, right? So I got villains, you know what I mean? And usually you could tell, sometimes you can't, but you got to know where your villains are, y'all, because it's super villains. And sometimes they're like Crip Walkers. They're like under the layers. Know who your characters are. Make sure you got the best characters now. So I talked about this before, but you can't even help it now. People are being replaced in real time. Characters are being replaced as we speak. And if your vibration is really low, you still cursing out your mother, you still sleeping with a monster, you still honey trapping, you still jungle gymming with women that are just fetishizing you and you just trying to get your ego and your self-esteem back. Your characters are going to be low. You only going to accrue the characters of the vibratory frequency you're at. So if you're still in that mindset, you're a victim. Because I talk about all day, because people, you know, let me explain something, y'all. Because I speak about impediments inside of the system where each of the characters we're experiencing different things, doesn't mean I'm participating as a victim. It's stating a fact. People will tell you all day, oh, you brown people are just victims. That's a lie. Me speaking about things that are happening to me as a character, they exist. And because you're telling me I'm a victim, it's because you're not even in a position to see that because you're not even on my level. You wouldn't know what that's about. Because the majority of people who talk that kind of smack have never been around brown people in their house. They've never been to a brown person's house. And if they talk about brown people, they're only talking about lower vibrational, what they perceivably see as poor people. They've never been in a middle class and above middle class brown family's house. They've never been around them. They've never been about their family dynamics. If they did, they couldn't have such prejudices and say things like you eat fried chicken. Brown people don't eat fried chicken like that. That's an American thing. Because if you go to the Caribbean, you go to brown people don't eat fried chicken like that. Watermelon was something that was eaten on farms back in the days. That's not even something that brown people do. Like the fact that you could say something like that lets me know that you are under a different tier, a lower tier of mind control. Okay. You on that tier of mind control, so you're only exposed to those lower tier people and they match you. So that's all you could say. Because if you were around we have somebody in our group who's brown, who's never been around decent brown women of a certain stature. Brown women are not doing crazy things like that. It's just not, it's socially, most brown women in America, if they're under some sort of mind control, it's usually religion, and it makes them behave. Unless they're the preacher's daughter, then they get a little buck wild. I think that goes to Lunars too. I think anybody's the preacher's daughter, y'all get a little buck wild. I don't know if it's because y'all locked into the roof or Jesus is in control, but when y'all get loose, y'all get loose. That's just my observation. Other than that, But most women of color, especially in the United States, are very just, they have a certain standard of behavior. It's just, it's not, it isn't what is being promoted on social media. And because the social media version of lower class, lower vibration, like Cardi B isn't reminiscent of any woman of color that would ever be anywhere where I would be. Other than when I was in Rich's, in a flip mode world with Rich. And she just looked like Cardi B. She didn't really act like her. Yeah, that wouldn't be somebody any decent person would be around. You know, she's a certain kind of, and it's nothing wrong. She comes from a certain background, but that's not the average brown woman. Most lunars don't know the difference between a person of a sub level social economic position that's, you know, below the, you know, economic standard, and above. They can't tell the difference because it's woefully ignorant. It's like you should be able to tell, like I can tell a lunar child who's been raised in a class, a different kind of class. I could tell. I could tell in behavior. I could tell, even if they have ripped jeans and they look like hobos, I already know that most likely they're raised in a wealthier family, because that's usually, they don't prioritize like stigmas of dressing to try to look a certain way. But most others can't tell the difference between poor brown people or educated brown people because it's woeful ignorance and they are mind controlled. They just perceive brown people of whatever stigmatized on television. So they already have, now wonderfully in South America, big to our South American family, not all places, like Chile's not like that, Argentina's not that, they don't get that full mind control brown people like that. So they don't really have that heads up of so it's nice. It's really nice to be perceived differently. Other places too, but that's not the standard. Like you're not walking around seeing Cardi B or Dirty Red. That's not brown, that's not the standard, but that's like the lowest tier of, you know, demographics. That's like you've lived in a house with a lot of incest, a lot of abuse. That's like a very low vibrational thing. That's not the standard in brown community, not in America, at least. American brown women are the most educated as well. When you look at the standard of degrees and the most degrees, brown women are the head of that, but the lowest in paid. And then you call them DEI, but then the most educated, most qualified, but they end up being the lowest tier as far as hired, and they do the most work with the most background, and they get to watch other people take on DEI and get positions where they're less qualified. And then they get to be called DEI on social media by so-called, you know, the so-called whistleblowers talking about brown people as if we've gotten all the benefits of you know, what do you consider, what was it, of DEI, whatever that's called. Yeah, it's diversity and inclusion, right? Nah, we're the bottom. So any brown people, please stop saying it, lunars, because I won't respect you, because if you know that that's not true, is where, and if you are just smart enough, if you really think that I'm lying, I want you to go look at the statistics and you're going to be shocked to see that they are the bottom. They don't receive any benefits. If you see a brown person who's a doctor, she's 10 times more qualified, because just to get a basic position as a physician or to get hired. If you see her as a pilot, she's had to do more hours and she has to be more qualified than anybody else who's flying next to her. So stop saying it, because it makes you look ignorant and it makes you look like you're under full mind control. Because if you know that social media is meant to make you perceive people in a certain way, then you would already know that that's a byproduct of mind control. Okay. I just say that because sometimes I see y'all say things and I'm like, yeah, you're fully under mind control. There's no, I joke around with it, I play around with it, but it's very interesting to see that someone will say they're fully woke and they don't believe in fake media, but they'll believe all the perceptions of brown people that is perpetuated solely on social media, as if no other groups. If you look at the crime statistics, 60% is done by another group and it's not brown people. And you would never think it, because all you see is poor brown children doing heinous things, and they do those things, but they are not the only ones, and they're not the ones at the heightened amount of doing that. Okay, so welcome to the mind control programming, and welcome to the end of the simulation. You about to be woke, and that's why they don't want you to say the word woke. They're trying to ban woke. Actually, Trump, the orange man, who is it? Or is it Elon Bioborg Musk? He's the one trying to ban woke, right? Oh, and my previous Governor Santos. I liked Governor Santos, but he's like, we got to get rid of this woke culture. Why are they trying to get rid of you waking up? Why is it called, why is woke negative? Woke means you have an understanding of things beyond what's being presented to you. Why would that be something you attack? Because it's connected to the brown community who probably made up the terminology, but that's insane because it literally means waking up from the simulation. But they want to ban the very thing, the very word, the very concept of it, so that you stay perpetually embedded into a system that will keep you here into the next reset. Because if you stay here, it's not to scare you. Might be a little scary, right? If you stay here, you're gonna have to stay for the full reset until the next reset. It's like, you know what I'm saying? If it's like, you know, when you're staying at the train station, big up to all people who like to take train. New York, you know, we stay waiting for trains, right? Especially if you're on the east side. I used to have to wait at 241st for the train to leave. Anybody from 241st in the Bronx? If you go to Metro North, you have a time. If you wait for the subway, you just gotta wait until it leaves. There's no real time. It just leaves when it leaves, when the conductor's ready, right? So you're waiting at the train, right? And you know, because many of you, big up to those who are at 241st, you know who I'm talking about, who are from New York, because it's next to the border of Mount Vernon. Big up to Boogie Money under Mount Vernon and the Boogie down Bronx. I used to take the subway at 241st if I had to catch the subway, and I would be pissed off. Like, this is when I was in shape, y'all. I'm a woman of, I can't, I could probably do it. I just got a lot more weight on me, but I used to do double, who's from New York? I used to do double stairs because if I was hear the train come, I knew I had a certain period of time where I would have to catch the train. So I would double the stairs. So I would, you know, do 2 stairs at a time and hike it so I could get up to the train. Because if I missed the train, I would have to wait until the next train came to take me where I want to go. That's what it is if you aren't trying to be ready, willing, and able to make it to reset in physical body. It's important. Why is that? You know, this is my opinion, and I can't vet this out. I've seen it in the etheric realm, and some of you who are maybe more vetted in it, you could kind of give me your opinion. But really, in itself, if you want to stay in physical form for this last hurrah, the finale of until we reach reset. Why? Is because they have this net. And I've seen it, like it's yellow. It's like that's the golden. That's why I actually think it's the yellow brick road. It's whenever I see it, I talked to Zoomies about it. It looks like like cells that are yellow. It looks like a yellow brick road. It's surrounding us. But when you die, you get out of this physical body. The physical body actually allows you to kind of ground yourself here to participate in the game further. But once you're out of body, they collect souls and they do it with this electrical grid. I actually think that's what the yellow brick road is. Because every time I see it, I'm like, wow, it's surrounding us. I've seen it all over, like times. This is like the twilight time. I'll see it sometimes when I'm in the bathroom or when I see it. So that captures, remember we talked about them taking souls and collecting them on the dark side of the moon and recycling them and shooting them back with no memory back into the matrix. That's what happens when you're out of body. They have way more control at collecting souls. And they have like probably some magnetics, because a lot of the technology they have, it probably draws. I think we talked about this in the book we read in book club, which was Interview with an Alien with Errol and Matilda. And Errol talked about the fact that they have this like thing that draws your soul to it. Now we talk about the tunneling system where people see the white light and they're always following it and they see their family members waving and they usually go in that direction. It's kind of like that, but it's some sort of magnetosphere that pulls in that soul and keeps them encapsulated in this realm, in the simulation. You want to stay embodied. That means you got to stay healthy. I mean, it's harder to stay. That's how you know we're in the finale, because it's harder to stay healthy. It's just we're in that time. So it's like, God darn it, you could have a Big Mac and it never bothered you, but in the finale, that mother freaking nearly took you out. Like swallowing a human bone, a femur in your neck. Like a femur gets stuck in your throat. Everything in the finale is going to be tougher because it's meant to be. It's the hardest level. And depending on your hierarchy within the simulation, you may be here for the easy ride because you're not here to wake up out of the simulation. You're a newbie. And usually people have comfortable lives, who have a lot of comfortable, who aren't experiencing really stress. Those are the people who, you know what's weird? People who have the easiest lives tend to do a lot of drugs. Or tough. No, it's extreme. No, I can't say that. I take that back. It's extremes. It's like either some people who have really easy, like complacent lives, live very apathetic in their drive. They tend to do a lot of drugs and alcohol. And then extreme opposite is people who've had really troublesome lives, like trauma-based lives where they've been abused, they're trying to numb it, kind of like that. So I see two ends of the spectrum. I shouldn't use that example because it's the two extremes. It's like, you know, the extremes always match. They're always the equal opposite. So like you see someone who's really overweight, really big, they're obese, and then you'll see someone who's really, really skinny, emaciated. You know, they're suffering from the same thing as malnutrition, because the person who's obese keeps eating because they can't fill nutritionally, whether it's spiritually, they're not able to fill the void, or nutritionally, they're not getting enough, so they don't stop eating because they're always looking for more nutrition because food is void of nutrition. So it makes them want to eat. They don't have a cap. The person who's emaciated is woefully not, you know, woefully emaciated. Like they're woefully starving themselves and they're not getting nutrition. So it's the same condition, just opposite ends of the same thing. So it's kind of like that. Got to be careful with extremes now. You want to stay somewhere in the middle. And I don't say, like, we were discussing this the other day. I say you should have fun. If you have now upgraded yourself to a proper mate, and if you've upgraded yourself to a higher position, you should be allowed, because we talked about not being able to have sexual partners. Wait, should I say this? No children. Let me give a forewarning because I might go a little left now, if you're okay with that. So put the little ones, the buds on. I got to give mamas and aunties and abuelas time. Hold on. Because sometimes I was about to go left and I want to watch my conversation because I remember being on YouTube and I love listening to videos. And I was so happy when people were mindful not to curse or anything, because I would have my little one next to me when I'm listening to videos, like I'm cleaning, nursing, you know. So put the little ones in the room, put the buds on, y'all, because FleurBrun may go left. It's not after 12. So I'll try to stay purposeful. We'll put the buds on. Get the little ones, get them a coloring book, put them in the other room. I don't want them hearing FleurBrun going, saying things that will hurt their peace of mind, okay, or yours, and you have to question them, okay? So I'll give you like a minute, because I know mommy's, we'll do a countdown. I'll give you like 2 minutes, and I'll read comments. Because I think it's important to talk about, so, you know, I figure I only get to talk to you for a certain period of time, so. Is everyone, all the little ones are away? Mommy's, buds, okay. Put a little baby Einstein on. It's good for mommies. Remember, if you're preggo, because my pregos, make sure you put that, the very beautiful, you know, if you play classical music on your tummy, it just helps the brain synapses be more advanced and more neurons to develop. So no, that's good. You know, I played violin for what, 14 years? 12 to 14 years, something like that. I played clarinet, I played flute. My grandmother plays piano. Yeah. So it's good to play the music for the little ones when they're more, because it helps their brain capacity, especially when they're going to be infiltrated by a whole bunch of chemicalization when they're born. So that helps. Okay. All right. So let's go into the mating, because this is the fun part, and it can be if you want to mate. If you don't, and you're just asexual, then just ignore me, because that may not be what you want to do. But I say, if you're in the simulation, because once you wake up out of the simulation, I'm sure sex is not going to be the same. I don't know if you watch. I know people think it's weird. I love Barbarella. I always say that my ultimate goal is to go back to being Barbarella, the brown Barbarella, the FleurBrun version, with the shag and my shit. What? If you don't know what Barbarella is and you're of a certain age, you'll see. And I know you're going to think I'm a weirdo, but that's like my ultimate, that's my memory of what I represent outside of here. Yeah, she's saucy. But if you want to be like Barbarella, if you watch Barbarella, and I'm going to use an example, it's like, you know, you're traveling and you're investigating new realms and beings, and like she came up on this planet. I think somebody watched this one time when I recommended it. It was like, oh, FleurBrun, you're out of control. So she went upon this planet and they didn't have sex the same way, right? So on this planet, like she normally where she comes from, because they're more advanced, they don't have sex like what we primitive, like wand and womb, none of that. So they just usually put their hands up and they take a pill and they close their eyes and they kind of like have like mental orgasms, right? But she went on this planet where the guy, she went to like go give him a pill and he was like, what is that? And she was like, you want to have sex like the primitive way? And she was like, she looked at him like it was crazy. She's like, oh, what happened? And then there was one time they were giving her orgasms by putting her inside of an organ machine, like a machine, what is it called? Like organ? I don't know what kind of machine it is, like those old-fashioned machines, and they put her inside and they were playing and she was having orgasms. Like I'm a child from the time frame. I don't know if you ever watched Tina Turner and Tommy, the movie Tommy. Like if you watch movies like that, I come from that time frame. Anyway, but really in itself, like if you're in the simulation, the organ, thank you, the organ. If you're in this simulation and you have a character upgrade, most likely your character upgrade, if you aren't if you're not jugged up, okay, if you're higher minded, your character, especially if it's a main character and it's your lover, because usually and not all simulations are the same. Every time you come inside of the video game, you have your own default system, like your base gameplay. So you'll have characters, like sometimes it'll be like you'll have two characters that are supportive characters, which you perceive to be guides, and then you'll have maybe a mate, and then one that's an enemy, or two. It just depends on each person as we come in. But usually, for the most part, most of us have a love partner or a love interest within the dynamics. That's why some people only have one, some have multiple. That's why sometimes when those who are, and I noticed this, and maybe it's judgment, and you guys can share this. Mostly what I notice is like when you're higher in the game, you only have one. If you're lower in the game, you have multiple, because it's almost like in order to gain the most masterful, or just be able to be able to pick, you know, if you have less of a choice, it means that you're higher. If you have more choices, it means that you're lower. So if you have somebody who's running around, has multiple women and so on, it's because they're lower in the tier of the game. The higher up, you would have less choices. So I would just say myself, like I always have one love interest. And if I ever have the love interests, that's why it's important in the video game, being careful that if the love interest is no longer matching and it's time for them to leave, you have to let them leave, because that opens up the space for a lover or a mate that matches who you are at the new level of the game. And once you can get with that new lover in the game, now you can experience like, you know, really excellent orgasms, just healthy participation. There's no more competition. There's no breadcrumbing. There's just really healthy if you're higher in the level of the game. So it's really important to make sure that if you're here and you aren't torturing yourself. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm just gonna fast, I'm not gonna eat, I'm just gonna detox, I'm just gonna do that. Like, that's no fun. It's great to do, and you should uphold yourself healthy. And if you're mindful of the things that you put in your body, you don't have to do detoxes all the time. Now, if you're always gonna eat like what's the cereal? I don't know if you guys eat Fruit Loops. Do they make Fruit Loops anymore? I don't know. Fruit Loops, Apple Jacks. I like the Apple Jacks. I don't like Fruit Loops that much. It tastes like chemicals. I didn't serve my children cereal. Do they have Fruit Loops? Okay, let's just say you're someone who is detoxing all the time, but then after you stop detoxing, you go and eat McDonald's or Fruit Loops. Then that's why you're detoxing on time. You can't live like that, because part of you existing here is enjoying the experience. And part of enjoying the experiences is being able to participate in ways that are fun, fruitful, happy, joyous. Like, and if you're always constantly detoxing, if you're always constantly withholding from sex, if you're always constantly like sitting in a placement of isolation, what's the point of you being in a video game? You might as well stay at home. So very much so, I just think it's important for everyone, like if you have an absolute interest in participating in sexual endeavors, that you allow for that opening for, if you have if you've always had a partner, it's usually because you have that one character in there. Okay, so allow for yourself to clear out any, you can't have, you know, some of you got, you know, the side piece, women too. You always blame men. I know women. You always default to that one guy who just hits it right because you don't want to teach nobody else to do it. So you got to release him into the ether, because if you keep him around, you hold in the space. It's like there's no vacancy for another higher version. Just like I talked about Jacques, if there was a lower version, she got rid of him, she cleaned herself and so on. And then all of a sudden in the boardroom, she wasn't looking for anything. Here's Jacques, a higher, better, you know, more advanced, you know, version of her new partnership showing up with the same name. You got to be careful with that. And participating with males who are, and females too, because males and females, we all have, you know, males, you know, if you have a partner with a woman and you don't see her as a wife and a mother of your children, why are you messing with her? Because you're only having her hold a space. And if that space is only held, if you always have issues with women finding out what you're doing, busting you with another woman, it's because you only supposed to have one. If you are a man who has more spacing in his database and you're lower in the tier and you have all these women and it's never, you never busted, you never have problems with it, it's because that's where that's the realm you're supposed to be in. So that's, you're not going to have issues with that. But any male who's higher, if he's always trying to have a side piece, always trying to get a side McNugget, and he's always getting busted or is getting antagonized, always getting scrutinized, it's because you only have one in the game. So you're always going to have adversity when you're trying to pull in two to a position that only holds one. And then what happens too is if you only have one and you keep splintering, you're going to get pieces of the one. So you're never going to get quite the one that has everything. You're going to get pieces of her. So one may have like the physical shape that you want, but her mindset is off. And another one may have the mindset, but she doesn't have she doesn't have the body or the sexiness or the sexual appeal that you want. So you're always going to get splinters because you're trying to participate in a one person sport and trying to splinter it into 2 and 3. Okay. So if you get a lot of adversity, chances are it's because you have one for that spacing in your database. If you have multiple, it's going to be very easy. It's not going to be hard. That's why you see celebrities able to mitigate that kind of participation like that, is because they have the spacing for it, because they're lower tier in the realm. They're not here to leave. They're here. That's why they're higher. That's why they're here. They made it like the cell, you know, like the prisoners who are going to be there for life. You know, they make it fried chicken on the back of the toilet in mid-noon on the back of the, you know, whatever, what they stole from the kitchen or saved over days. They're here for the long haul. So everything's going to be great and gravy for them. So that's why they can engage in more carnal behavior, because there's no real repercussions and they're lower tier. So they have access to more to make them stay comfortable. Okay. So women also, you know, if you have somebody that you're not letting go and he's sitting, holding a space, and you're constantly having to put all your attention on him rather than yourself, it's because that person is a space holder that needs to be released so that you can take on a higher version of a character that's going to hold you and be with you and meet you at your vibratory frequency that you're at now. If you keep holding on to a lower version of yourself, you're never going to get the tools or certain perks that you get when you get to higher stages of the game. So you got to release them, even if it's a friend, that's a friend that you keep holding on to who has lower ideology, who's constantly engaged in behavior patterns that you've already released. Holding on to them because they hold some status in, you know, your mind of memory of what they meant to you when you were younger is going to only cause more harm, because you're grounding yourself to a lower realm of frequency with a person, place, or thing that's going to always pull you here. And then when you try to get higher up, you're always going to be pulled down. So it's better to release them than and do it gracefully, because really in itself, you aren't going to be met with adversity when you release someone that isn't meant and doesn't match you frequency wise. There in the game, there's always expirations on certain character placement. The character stays, the base character stays, but the frequency of the vibratory like let's say in Resident Evil, your partner at the time, he only has a knife. He can't, or a flashlight. He can't really help you at the beginning of the game. It's like, mother freaker, what you here for? Just to shine a flashlight when we're about to meet a zombie? And then all of a sudden, bam, he runs off or he gets killed, right? And then you're like, okay, I got to do this alone. And then next thing you know, at the next stage of the game, another character comes and he comes with a shotgun and he comes with enough ammunition to get you out of the next placement. But if the other guy was there with just a flashlight or just a knife, you would have been stuck in the same room, limited because you didn't have a support system that matched you or could up level you to the next, to the next stage of the game. I'm saying this as a video game, y'all. I know it's very hard because someone's sitting here like, oh my God, FleurBrun really thinks. I know. I don't think, y'all, this is an interactive video game. This is all artificial intelligence. We criticize artificial intelligence, but that's what's helping to co-create this reality we're all existing in. That we vilify the AI that is kind of relegated to simplicity or control systems in this realm, but really in itself, that's not the AI that we come from. When we came from the future, the things that we were coexisting with were beyond our concept of advanced. Like, it's just a thought became reality, it became a hologram, it interfaced with you. It's a whole nother placement that we came from. So we're meeting the remedial version of AI, where there's a more advanced version of AI where we come from. We wouldn't be here in this hologram if we didn't have one. It's probably controlling the system, the probably, basically instituting the way that it runs, doing data checks and all that kind of stuff. It probably does all that. Okay. So it's very important. So I would just say, just make sure if you're in this, in this simulation, have fun. It's a video game. I know I make it seem crazy sometimes. I know you think some of you may think I'm darn near insane, but you're about to see when that Mother Hubbard ship comes, you're going to see how insane it really is. It's not insane. It's a byproduct of a simulation that we're all co-creating inside a simulating room. Okay. And if you want to have fun, have fun. Just, know the things that don't fall in the booby trap. Gentlemen, if she's a honeypot, don't be a honeypot simp. Don't be a jungle, don't be a jungle fever honeypot simp. Because you have to know your mind control. I know what mind control I have. Some of you know it because you know me for a long time. I've got certain things that are my weaknesses, and they will send them to me or activate it or trigger it. The simulation knows my weakness. So those weaknesses I've had to work on and try to strengthen, you know what I mean? But, some people are very enamored by visuals. That's why everything that's being promoted right now is trying to distract them visually. Get a bigger butt, get bigger lips, get more hair, get bigger boobies. Like, everything is meant to totally make you focus on physical. So it's purposefully honey trapping everybody. Because if you get caught, men, especially young boys, you got to watch it, because again, for those who are in here, the weakest of the sexes, because everybody has their thing in here, is men. Because, and I always say this, look at the governmental system. They will always send a Russian spy. They call them a femme fatale, or what they call them, like a, what are they called? Oh God, they're called something. They'll send in, why I say Russian, because the Russian women to me is like physiologically, Eastern European women in our governmental system, because our government is all lunars. Okay. So they're enamored by very Eurocentric, like the strongest physiology, like the overhaul of the physiology of women, which is look at your President Trump. He likes Eastern European women as well. That's his phenotype that he has a thing for. So if they send them into the governmental system to USAP them and get information from them, and it's easy to honey trap them because most of the men are just enamored. And if he's a gay man, all they have to do is get a really sexy, strong, strapping gay man and put him in a position where he has access to the guy. And usually people falter from physical beauty. That's why it's being promoted so much. They want people to look so overly sexual, overly look in a certain way, because it's easier to get them to be detracted or to be distracted. So men, pay attention to that. Brown men, it's not all, because the majority of brown men are with brown women, but the ones who were notably with status, they get the jungle fever honey traps for them. Because most men of status, they want to make sure that he is looped into a demographics of women that don't have any ties to his lineage, so that they can keep him under watch and control of his finances, so that the finances don't pool back into the indigenous community. They want it pooled out of. So it's easy because once they're, I've talked about this, and Daryl, thank you, Daryl, from our group, talked about this, and our gentleman in our group talked about this, is that, all of the athletic schools, the scholarship males that are melanated, they're all sent into the Midwest where there's only lunar women. And you don't think they purposefully did that? And then they promote hypersexualism to lunar women as if all brown men have big penises. So they have this fetishizing thing going on. And then you got the whole, so it's a perfect storm. Why did they do that? Why wouldn't they pull these brown men into their communities so that they can be with brown women and build, a family with more strong ancestral ties? They don't want that. So that's a honey trap. Okay. And I don't care what you say. You could say, oh, no, I do it naturally. Social engineering of phenotypes, of certain phenotypes that are made to look more appealing, is purposefully done. It's just done. You can't fake beauty, though, because beauty in itself, it doesn't matter what they promote. There's a natural phenotype on the earth realm that is always beautiful, whether they're lunar, Asian, or so on. There's like a base phenotype for all females that is just universally beautiful. Okay. But there's a projected phenotype that is projected, and it is projected to certain communities so that it makes them more mind controllable. That's all. So just be careful. You can do what you want, but I'm just saying that's a honey trap. That's a jungle. It's called the jungle fever honey trap. It's meant to just detract you and take you out of a certain mindset, and it's meant to perpetuate constant feelings of they're writing me from Brazil. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that, but you could do what you want. Like I said, that's not a honey. That doesn't work for females like that. Women of color, it's just a whole nother, you would have to do other things. They have other things that would trigger them to detract or to be distracted. And that's usually materialism, maybe status, maybe something like that. It's not necessarily going to be men. It could be, but it's not lunar men, because women of color, they're pretty, it's not to say all, but most brown women, they just generally like brown men, from what I know. And I know more brown women than other people who are not brown. So someone say, oh, that's not true. Yeah, they like brown men. So they will stay by themselves if they can't get the right suitable one. And I always tell brown women, if you're in a location that's not a good location, then you need to uproot yourself if that's what you want to do, because it's a simulation. You could go anywhere, even though we're probably in the same room when we move. We think we're in somewhere, distance is an illusion. That's why let me do a fun fact. I just found out from somebody. Should I? I don't know if I can say this. Yeah, I can. I have a friend. I don't know if I should say it. Sometimes I shouldn't. Okay, I have a friend who talked about when the people get moved who are migrants. They talk about the migrants when the ICE comes and gets them, and that, normally, like when we take a flight to another country, it takes like 5 hours. When they take the military flights, it takes 2 hours. You don't think why that is? Why does it take 5 hours for you and it takes 2 hours for them? Why, when my first flight to Brazil, it was like 5 hours and now all the flights are 8? Distance is an illusion. They are flying you probably in a circle to give you this. Listen, y'all, that's a whole nother concept that we probably could talk about, the whole psyop of distance. When meanwhile, you could take, remember the Concorde, y'all? Do you remember the Concorde? The Concorde used to be a plane that went from New York to Paris in like 2 hours. Me and my husband were supposed to get on years ago. And then remember, it went up in flames, and the Concorde, how does one plane go up in flames and then you just stop? And you could supposedly see the sphere around the earth. One flight blew up and they just stopped the Concorde. Do you remember that? Who's old enough to remember the Concorde? How come you don't see that anymore? How come there was a flight? Do you remember this one? Those from Barbados. I think it was Barbados. I gotta ask my mom. I think it's Barbados. Is it Barbados or Bermuda? It might be Bermuda. It's either Bermuda or who's from Barbados? Those from Barbados, can you let me know? I don't know if it's Barbados or Bermuda. It was one of them. Some of you know. Remember the flight that goes to Africa and it only took them like 2.5 to 3 hours? Do you remember that one? I don't know if it was for Ghana. I don't know what part of Africa, but it was like to Ghana to something. Do you guys remember that? It was like 3 hours or 2.5 hours. And then they stopped the flight. I don't know if it was probably Bermuda. Some of you from Bermuda or Barbados, let me know if it's which one it was. It was only a couple hours. Remember they said they had a storm. Remember this was like, I did a video. I did so many videos. I gotta look back, and sometimes you guys look at the video and you remind me of videos I did so long ago. I did a video and they said there was a sandstorm coming from Africa and it was gonna hit us on the coastline. I was, how does a sandstorm come from Africa and it hits us like in an hour? Like it was so crazy. I gotta look at the whole video. It's like, but distance is an illusion, y'all. They're playing with us in the sky. We're not flying anywhere. They're probably flying in circles and just giving it an illusion like we're flying somewhere. I really would, I would debunk that. Like I need somebody who's into aviation to kind of, or FAA whistleblower. We probably should talk about that because that to me is a whole nother psyop. It's Barbados, right? Thank you. Barbados is in the house. Pick up to Barbados. My mom's best friend just transitioned. She was, no, they were from Bermuda. They were from Barbuda. Barbuda, sorry, not Barbados, Barbuda. That was her best friend just transitioned. Yeah, so I mean all that, but I didn't say anything naughty. You made the children leave and I didn't even say anything. I probably just talked about something else, but I would just be careful with that. So okay, so the goal of this video is we're getting there. We're there. The simulation now is condensing. Characters are being replaced in real time. Yoga Tom is now Tiger Tom. Thugged out Tyrone is CEO Tyrone with high sky miles. I told you I met Rod. I'm gonna tell Rod. Tell Rod to watch this. Rod, I met him when I first came into simulation. He was doing the same thing, but I know him. The zombies know this. I don't want to say who he replaced in my simulation, because when me and him made the video, it could only have happened if one character left. And that character left fully, and that's when Rod showed up. So Rod is part of a character that existed always in my simulation. And he he showed up smoking when I came in the realm. Same way. It was like some weird kind of like what I remember when I first had the vision, I was like, oh my God, I know him. I know him. I came into the simulation like I came off the ship though, when I first met him. And I had a spacesuit on and everything. You know, nothing crazy, but like, you know. And he just was amused. He didn't even move he was sitting on a tree log smoking like some sort of wood thing. And he was just amused, just like trying to just get information, like where I come from, nothing, just too cool for school. Same way he is now. That's crazy, right? Anyway, all right, y'all. I think I talked to you so much. What time is it? Oh my God, it's 2:03. Yeah. I hope this was okay, a conversation. And you know, if you think I'm judging, I probably am. I used to say that I wasn't judging. I'm judging. Yeah, there's a lot of things happening in the simulation, and there's a lot of. Listen, if you're gonna be a player, play hard. If you're gonna be caught up in all kinds of agendas and you know, social engineering, you here for the long haul. You're gonna come back for the recycling. But if you here and you built that life and you trying to leave and wake up out of the simulation, get bowdy, get healthy, just, you know, do things right properly. I'm not saying you shouldn't be healthy. You got to be healthy and sane and sober, but you can have moments where you can enjoy. So, you know, as much as you do detoxes and so on, you can enjoy yourself and maybe do something that's a little healthy, you know, a little what you perceive as naughty, but healthy, naughty. You know what I mean? If you've been cleaning out the yoni, cleaning out the closet, getting the old lover out, and now you got an empty space, and now the new Tyrone is in, he's upgraded, strong, looking like the monkey man off of freaking Wakanda. He wants to take you up in his monkey jungle and swing you from the vines. Let it happen. Why not? Give birth to all his children? What? Living up in the jungle, ice jungle. I'm in love with that character. I don't know. It's who I come from. It's the man that's outside of here, the simulation. He's got me. I can't wait to meet him when he comes off the ship. Maybe he's already off the ship. Maybe I'll make a video about that. That's the real jungle fever. Remember jungle music? House music, all that was house music all night long. Remember jungle music? Yeah. That's like that Matrix scene. They had jungle music, right? It was like house/jungle music. They didn't have no shoes and socks on. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm out of control. All right. And you know you're healthy if your hormones are working. If your hormones are working, you need to clean up. You know what I mean? If you're a woman of a certain age and you're healthy, you should be spot on. You should have some fire in you. Anyway, all right, y'all. I think this was enough. I hope you enjoyed my rant, somewhat educational video. I hope it's okay. And yeah, I'll battle you on what's the other thing? TikTok. They was threatening to battle me and saying I'm scared. I don't really have time. If I had time, I'd battle everybody on. I actually want to go in X and battle the Bioborg Musk. That's probably more important. TikTok, I don't know. I don't really. There's all these new I'm on Rumble. I don't even know, y'all. YouTube has got me like not caring I'm on here. You got me because I only know YouTube. If I had another site to go on, I probably would. I don't go on I think I'm gonna be on Twitter. I'm gonna figure out Twitter. Anyway, I'm gonna be on Zoom tomorrow. Big ups to everybody in Zoom. I like YouTube. I've been on YouTube all the time. People are like, why you stay on YouTube when you get abused? It's like an abusive, relationship. Like your parents are abusive, but they got the best house on the block. They still got snacks in their fridge. You still got your own bedroom there, even though you got restrictions, but you're still comfortable. It's kind of like that's how YouTube to me. It's like living in a house where you got all these new restrictions, but it's still the most comfortable. That's why I'm on YouTube. It's where I began. It's my humble beginnings, right? I mean, I could change another site, but it wouldn't be as much fun. I don't know if I could do lives like this. Anyway, all right, y'all, I'm out of here. I gotta go cook. I gotta go cook. Y'all got me. Listen, I gotta go cook for my family. Okay. I'm making some bone broth, and I should have started the bone broth a long time ago, but I've been talking to you fine, folks. All right, y'all. So I'm out of here. Enjoy. Thank you for listening to my rant. Again, I always apologize if I offended you. I offend myself some days, so don't feel alone. If I offend you, believe me, I offend myself. You aren't alone in the journey of a Sagittarius. There's days when I just gaslight myself. Anyway, I love you. I wish you all well. And this is the first time I actually did a Zoom that was synced into my actual account on the mix between the two. So I'm happy it worked. So I'm getting better technologically because I'm going back to the future. So hopefully I'll get better. All right, y'all. Have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon. I'll talk to you tomorrow on Zoom.